Good evening, everybody. It's really, really nice to see so many people in this room. I just want to welcome you all to our work session for February 10th, 2025, and we will start with roll call. Kinsey?
Lee,
Here.
Crossan,
Here.
Gerlach. Here. Mills,
Here.
Lyerly,
Here.
McCoy,
Here.
Becker.
Here.
Okay. We are also joined at the table by two students. Can you please introduce yourselves?
Hello, my name is Andres Mora. I'm a senior at Preble High School and I'm the Intercity Student Council President.
Hello, I'm Mylea. Oh, sorry, my bad. Hello, I'm Mylea. I'm a freshman at West High School.
Welcome. And the next on our agenda is an open forum. Is there anyone who wanted to speak tonight? Okay, then we're going to move on to updates. First thing on our agenda is an update from Mr. Troutman and Angie Robley.
Well, good afternoon. Again, my name is John Troutman, principal with Clifton Larson Allen, your external auditor. Again, the point of tonight's meeting is just about 10-15 minute, just an update, kind of go over a high level of the audit report, the audited financial statements. Anything else you want to ask me, anything else you want me to go over? I do have a little bit of a sneak peek at another GASB coming up next year. So I'll talk about that for a couple minutes and let you know that's coming down the pipe for this coming summer. So with that, I will we'll kind of go through the main annual financial report itself. So if you're following along, that's the main audited financial statements. I will call out page numbers if you want to follow along, but it is not necessary. The very first page is the independent auditor's report, and that is really the result of the audit. That's our opinion. That's CLA's opinion on the school district's audited financial statements, and it starts with the opinion paragraph. So that's the result, and in our opinion, the financial statements referred to above present fairly in all material respects the respective financial position of the governmental activities, each major fund, and the aggregate remaining fund information of the district as of June 30th, 2024. So what that really is an unmodified opinion. That's a clean opinion. That's really what your internal controls that operate throughout the entire year, throughout the entire school year, fiscal year, really set out to achieve. So again, that's good news. That's exactly what you intended and you expected and what you set up. So that's good. That's a good result. So great job there. Rest of that opinion letter, I won't go through. It goes through just some background on our opinions and the referencing a little bit more to the financial statements, goes through our responsibilities as your auditor, goes through your responsibilities as a school district as far as what you provided us during that audit process. The next section, which starts on really page 6, is the section of the annual financial report called Management Discussion and Analysis. And I just want to point that out kind of briefly. That is prepared by the district, 100%. That is really plain English language of kind of the highlights of the year. So if you're going to read one section or if any citizens want to read one section, that's really what it is. That's the section to look at because it summarizes a lot of the data. Obviously, there's hundreds of pages beyond that goes into a lot of detail and a lot of financial detail, and that's certainly valuable as well. But this turns it into a little bit easier to read. So with that, I won't reference anything in there, but other than to point that out. What I want to talk about really is beyond this section, which is the basic financial statements, and it's really on page 18. So page 18 is really the first fund statement that you have in your basic financial statements. Again, this is the governmental funds. So this lists all of your major funds. Yes.
Just to clarify for the board, add 3 pages to what he says so that we'll be on the PDF.
The balance sheet really brings in the really the assets, liabilities, and fund balance. So it's a snapshot. It's a point in time as of June 30th, 2024. Again, it's your major funds. So you have your general fund on the left, you have your capital project fund, your referendum debt service, and then you have a fund or a column called other governmental funds. That's really an aggregate. That's your subtotal of all your non-major funds. So this really captures the entire district, governmental funds. I'm going to focus on the leftmost column. So that's the general fund. That's your main operating fund. Again, that's where the majority of the activity of the district resides. And I want to focus right down to that bottom third or bottom subtotal there of total fund balance. You can see total fund balance ended the year June 30th, 2024, 70,241,715. There's 4 components of that fund balance, and it is a hierarchy. The top number is the most restrictive. The bottom number is the least restrictive. So again, all 4 of those components are made up of that 70 million. 269,000 is non-spendable, and that's exactly what it sounds like. You don't have access to that yet. Still part of the 70 million, still part of the of your fund balance at the end of the year, but you don't have access to it. So that's the most restrictive. Below that, you have access to it, but now you have a restriction. So 827,000 is restricted fund balance. Again, restricted is outside of the district. So that is not a self-restriction or commitment or anything like that. That's something else. That's grants, other things, other contracts that you've entered into that restrict that money. Still yours, still available, but it's restricted for use for particular things. Below that is everything the district has now or responsibility over and access to. Assigned fund balance, 13 million. You set aside a portion of your fund balance and you assign that for subsequent years expenditures and various things. Again, that is an assignment. You can unassign, reassign, things like that. And then you're left with the balance, and the balance is 56,144,000. That's your unassigned. That's your reserve. That's the point in time as of June 30th where you have carried over that reserve, unassigned, uncommitted reserve into the fiscal year we're in right now, 24-25. So again, 56,144,000. If you take a look at that number and kind of focus on that a little bit, you know, again, the big question is, well, is that a lot? Is that too much? Is that too little? Where does that reference or how does that compare to other school districts? And and really how you do that is you transfer that into a percentage. Now, why do we do that? Because then relativity as far as size doesn't come into play. So if you turn that into a percentage of your total expenditures, which is on the next page, about 120 million, it really is roughly about 56% of fund balance. So you have or 46% of fund balance, I'm sorry. You have a very good, healthy fund balance. So that's important for a couple different reasons. One, school districts in Wisconsin are cash flow challenged by the nature of both the property tax activity of when that comes in, that revenue, and also your grants. Again, your grant you receive throughout the year and you receive sometimes later in the year where you've already operated for months and months and providing educational services throughout the year. And yet that money to fund that hasn't come in yet. So having that fund balance and having enough reserve is extremely important. It also ties into any kind of bonding or anything you go out for, you get generally a positive impact on your bond rating on that. So again, all around great fund balance, but certainly, you know, keep an eye on that as you budget and your budgeting process is what you spend a lot of time on when you talk about that. Yes.
Can you just talk a little bit for people who are watching why, what your bond rating, why that's important?
Yeah, I mean, there's many components in when you go out for bonding and get rated, and I'm certainly not an expert in the rating process, but from what we see in the industry, again, there's major components like environment and your communities and things like that. But one of the largest components is your fund balance. Why? Because that's like a savings account, right? That's what you have in reserve in case of emergencies, in case of unbudgeted situations. So that's one of the components that they look at quite a bit, among many other things. But that is one of the direct components where we see challenges is when that number gets too low. So
And it affects your ability to borrow?
it affects your
At-
ability to
at what
borrow as
rate?
far as the rates.
Yeah, the
Yep,
rate you
yep,
borrow at.
yep.
Okay.
The lower the bond rating, the more interest you pay.
Basically, are you a good risk?
Exactly.
Okay.
Well said. Any other questions? I'll just kind of pause there. Yes.
When you're talking about,
Oh, sorry.
when you're talking about the percent on hand, you know, been through a couple of these where I was already starting to write down our the allows, the cash flow on that. This has been about the percentage we've had in years past as well with it. And this would be similar to other districts as far as percentage where they're fiscally sound on it.
Yes, the percentage is very similar to kind of the goal, what you want. There's many other districts in Wisconsin that have lower than that are challenged in the fund balance area. A lot of those districts have to short-term borrow throughout the year just to cover their expenditures. So again, we have some that have more, right? So from a wide range of districts that have that, but that's really a really healthy fund balance, 40, anywhere from 25 to 55 is exceptional. So good question. Any other questions there before I continue? No? Okay. If you do turn to page 20 or 23, I believe, and the next page basically past, there's the next page is reconciliation, and the page after that is really the statement of revenues and expenditures. And I really just kind of want to pause there or conclude there on the financial statements. And that's just to kind of fill in the blanks. And that is where we talked about the point in time, the fund balance as of June 30th. Well, this is the entire year. This is how you got there. So you'll see, of course, an income statement. You'll see revenues and then expenditures. And I won't read through each one of the functions, but those are the functions that all school districts have. And if you turn to the next page, you'll see the end of the income statement. And you can see right at the bottom there, the net change in fund balance is 1,794,000. So you can see where you got to that 70 million. You started the year, ended the previous fiscal year at 68 million and ended the year at that 70 million we talked about. So again, that just kind of completes the picture and the balance sheet and the income statement. With any other questions on financial information, otherwise I'm going to conclude really on that GBAPSD 101, which is the standard that's coming up, and I'll just spend a few minutes on that. But I just wanted to double check. There's no other areas of this report you want me to go over. I always like to point that out or ask that. So, okay. In conclusion, really the GBAPSD 101, and if you've listened to me and Angie in the last 3 years. There's been one right after another GBAPSD, new accounting standard, and every single one of them is related to liabilities. So we had lease liability. You heard me talking about that if you were here in years past. Then you had subscription-based agreements, which was effective in this particular financial statement. Now we're talking about next year, so 24-25 is going to be compensated absences. So you can see they're on kind of a mission and a trend of really capturing accurate liabilities as far as the national standards. And this one is probably going to be a little bit less work for the district than the other two. I know the other two were fairly robust as far as the amount of workload that districts had to do to prepare for this one. However, there's a few things that are a little bit unique to this. And what this is really doing is it's bringing in all compensated absences to employees and then changing the rules a little bit on those. You already keep track of all those, so it's a little bit different than leases and submittas and subscription-based IT arrangements where you had to kind of start from scratch and take an inventory. You already have all this in your HR and your payroll, and you need to keep track of this for other reasons. Some of it's also on your books as a liability already, but what they're doing is they're taking especially the sick leave component and the other components like comp time and personal time and things like that, if that's applicable, and they're saying, it's no longer going to be triggered a liability when it's paid out as cash or a benefit, but also time off. So that's a big change. So in the past, sick leave was never required to be calculated for time off. That was an unknown event. You don't know when people are going to use it. What they're now saying is you need to estimate on what's more reasonable than not going to be used. So again, it's going to be a little bit of an estimate of taking a look at your roster and your numbers and say, okay, how many people do we think are going to be using this again? And then there's also very unique, in some districts, there's very unique carryover of some benefits that have to be first included. Again, we'll have to wait and see and help you through that process if any of that exists. But some of the leave, like military leave and that kind of thing, is not required to be estimated. That is only when commenced. So that's good news. So the lift of this is going to be rather figuring out how many and what's applicable, and you've already probably done half of that already, so. Any questions on that? But it will increase, the liability will increase. That's what we've been seeing at almost every community, and municipalities are first up, and then school districts will be second on this summer.
Any questions? Brian?
Can you elaborate a little bit more on that? The absences versus the time used and how we've done in the past. So we didn't necessarily, can you just expand on that a little bit?
Yep, and I'll kind of do it two ways, or the easiest way to do it is explain the rule prior. So the rule that's currently in effect and prior. Vacation typically is recorded as a liability already. So that's really unchanged. Sick leave, PTO, personal time, comp time, whatever components you may have, really were never recorded if time off was the result. So if I have X number of hours of sick leave and I'm going to use that because I get sick 2 months from now, that is not a liability under the current rules. It's excluded because it's not estimated. I can't estimate when I'm going to get sick. So the prior rules were like, you just leave that off. Now they're saying, okay, it's more reasonable than not that I'm going to use 20 hours, and I'm using an individual example, but this is aggregate of all employees. If I'm going to use 20 hours and my average use is 20 hours, that's what you set up as a liability. So it's a little bit different way of thinking. There's certainly pure estimates in this. It's not going to be as actual as it used to be. And that's why there'll be a new estimate coming in on this. So whereas in the past, it was simply a calculation, whatever you had accumulated times the wage rate was the liability. Now it's going to be that plus this estimated amount. So again, we'll just take a look at it, and if you don't carry anything over for any particular leave, it's excluded automatically. You don't have to do anything with it. If it carries over, then there could be a vested or an unvested portion, and the unvested portion is what I'm talking about here, where it's the use. How it's done in practice, just to kind of circle that around and maybe make it a little bit clearer, is you simply take historical values and say how much sick leave was used. That's about a percentage, and then you apply that percentage. So it's actually not a huge amount of work, but it will increase the liabilities, which is exactly what they're trying to do. Their intent was to say that there's liabilities out there that are not recorded across the countries in financial statements. Good questions.
Anybody else? Angie, how often do we have to do this audit? Every year?
Thankfully, only one time a year, Laura. Thanks for asking that question. But John and I do get along. But
I know. It just feels like the audit process is quite lengthy and complicated. And you guys spend a significant amount of time putting that together, but it's necessary. And this report is full of information that I mostly understand.
some good nightly reading,
Yeah,
Laura. So
yeah.
look forward to that tonight,
Yeah.
right? No, yeah. So usually, and this all occurs like in summer months, right? So when we say that we are busy in the summer, that's what we're doing is we're closing the books and we're getting ready for the auditors to come in August. So they come in a couple days in June to do some prelim work, and then they're in the office a couple weeks in August. And then of course it takes a long time to wrap up and get our financials submitted. DPI requires financials to be submitted by December 15th. So.
Okay. So I look at this and I think there's an enormous amount of oversight over how our district or any public school entity, a lot of oversight on how they spend resources. So that's kind of my take on it. But anyone else want to? Go ahead, Lynn.
I just want to say, Angie, thank you for your excellent work, and it's so good to be able to rely on you, because I can't do this stuff, but boy, I trust that you can.
Rick?
Just one question. Does this report count as an internal audit or an external audit?
This is an external audit.
With internal help.
Yes, exactly. And Lynn, I was just gonna say, it's not just me who does this. It's a big team that gets this done. So, but thank you.
Yeah. Anybody else? All right. Thank you, guys. Okay, we're going to move on to referendum updates, and that'll be Kale. It's always my favorite part of the agenda, always. Go ahead.
Glad to hear that. So I will, again, just do this, as a kind of a brief update. We're
Kale, your mic.
There you go.
probably bring back into fold, maybe a visual for the team on the next update. Because we're getting into a bidding phase, for this spring that's gonna have a significant amount of work. So I'll start though with, again, this update. We do have one public event coming up tomorrow at MacArthur Elementary. It's an informational session in regards to our new elementary school. So we'll be showing progress of plans and really what we're going to be going out to bid with. That's going to show a lot of the hard work of a lot of individuals, community, staff, end users, facilities, and a number of professionals showing that input and how we came to the plans that we did. So that'll be a really exciting event tomorrow. And then two other kind of exciting milestones that involve not only our 2022 referendum, but our 2024 referendum. We'll have essentially our first large bid packages coming due at the end of this month. So on February 19th, we have a bid package for John Dewey for an HVAC upgrade that we'll be bringing to the board after that. We receive those bids on February 19th. And then for the 24 referendum, we'll have the opening on February 27th for Washington Middle School, a large renovation project there. So obviously, once we get those bid results in, we'll be bringing that to the board for approval and award of those projects. And that will really kick off what will be essentially nonstop bid packages coming in between mid-February to the end of April. So we have quite a few in that period. So I'll bring that a visual for the team to kind of see that bid schedule coming up here. And then hopefully trying to land those bid packages with board meetings for approvals. So very exciting there. But just to back up a little bit, just kind of wrapping up some of the existing projects for the 22 referendum that are happening. We will be carrying in the grandstands at West High School into the spring for completion. And then we'll wrap up that existing project. And then the existing projects at Preble and West on the interior renovations really are just in a punch list phase and closing out those projects. So those are actively being used today, and we'll put an end to those here shortly as we wrap up the just the minor punch list items, warranty items, things like that. And then with the 24 referendum, again, we'll have the four major projects, like I said, intertwined with the 22 referendum projects between now and the end of April. So we'll get that visual out for the board to see, but it's going to be a very busy spring.
Okay, so when you're talking about the 2022 referendum projects and wrapping those up, is there anything from that referendum that still isn't, that still needs to be started, or like, is there anything outstanding?
Yeah, so that previous slide deck I had shared in previous meetings still holds true. Those projects are the ones that there's new projects going out to bid this spring. I can rattle them off quickly here, but we have at Howe, Sullivan. You've already approved a roof at Washington. We have another roof at East. We have upgrades at Southwest Gymnasium, Franklin Middle School Gymnasium, John Dewey, which I just mentioned. We have a Lombardi chiller HVAC upgrade. And then obviously the West Grandstand completion as well. So that's just a quick rundown of that, but that was all stated in those previous slide decks, and that holds true too today.
All right. Andrew.
Is there any more firm information about a timeline for West and any definitive progress on finishing that grandstand?
Yeah, we really can't say definitive because we do have to wait for the frost to come out of the ground now to pour new foundations for the grandstand. But we do have contracts in place with the cell tower company to move their gear and to complete the construction of the grandstand. So as soon as that frost is out of the ground, we'll be construction teams will be getting after that one as soon as we can.
And when you say, does that mean, when you say there's a contract, that means a legally binding contract that they are party to and they must move their stuff?
Correct.
Do they have a deadline to move their stuff in this contract?
They do not, but they have a fixed amount that we've agreed to. So if they were to draw that out, that's likely going to cost them more dollars. So I don't see why they wouldn't try to accelerate that move as soon as possible.
I'm not sure I'm following. So it would cost them more money if they delayed?
That's an assumption on my part, but absolutely. Typically, when you talk about construction materials and things like that, I don't see any reason why they would be delayed, trying to delay their part of this progress. Construction materials are just going to go up with standard inflation costs.
Sure, but as it sits right now, they're fine. Their cell tower works. Half of West bleachers aren't there, but grandstand isn't there, but their tower works today. Tomorrow, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, worked when there was supposed to be not your fault, worked when the West seniors were supposed to, the drum showcase there and didn't get to have it because of that cell tower. So if there's not something that's, binding to make them move, I'm concerned. I don't want another season of activities reduced, because of this. And again, it is not your fault. It's not our fault, but it has to move or we can't finish.
I don't know how we can legally put a date on that. This contract is not indirect with us, although we are paying for it. Their contract is with the city of Green Bay. That's what they're bound to. We do have commitment from them. They've met with us almost on a weekly basis with their project team. By they, I mean the contracted vendor through Crown Castle. So they've committed to this planning, and they were committed to getting this done in the fall as well. But obviously we had to finalize contracts through the city, which put the delay into spring on that. But at this time, I'm not sure legally. We can look into that for you, and I can get back to you if we're able to attach some sort of date to that contract. And again, we don't have a contract direct with Crown Castle's contractor.
Just West West lost the marching showcase, so those seniors never get that back. And then also they're due to unrelated, not as critical. And although it does look great, the auditorium caused their holiday concert to be delayed till after the Christmas break. So that's two now for West. And so I would be concerned I wouldn't want anyone to feel like they're getting the short end of the stick, even if it's maybe just bad luck struck twice on a particular or thing. I just want to make sure that we're wrapping things up.
What I can say for sure with that is we can keep that the existing grandstand operational. The field will be in use. The track will be in use. We can dictate the impact on the existing facilities to avoid any delays or cancellations of events, things like that. So that in control. But I would have to get back to you if we can add some sort of schedule to that.
Brian.
Kind of going on the same guideline with that, tying into the partnership with the city on some things. If we can kind of stress the work load on that, and I'm not assuming that the city's slowing down on anything with it, but we've also had another partnership where we've talked about traffic beacons coming through for crosswalks that has also been slowed down or has taken longer than anticipated with it, that the city and the district had a partnership on. So I don't anticipate the city is purposely slowing these things down, but it seems some of these things, when we work with them, aren't getting done as quickly as we do. And if we're helping allocate funds to it, just kind of a gentle prod of like, we'd like to see some of these things done too, would be fantastic. So
I would say, just as a point of clarification, the city has not delayed any of this. This has been strictly the work with Crown Castle and coming to a resolution of the issue. But the city has been very supportive of the project to this point and have completed every step they've needed to in this process.
Anybody else? Okay, thanks, Gail.
Thanks.
Next, we have a strategic planning priorities and goals update. That'll be David Johns. And others.
Thank you. Good evening, board. Good evening, student leaders. Thank you for this opportunity to provide you another update on the strategic planning process. These updates have been coming to you over the last several months, documenting the evolution of what will ultimately be our strategic plan starting next year for the next 5 years. I'm joined at the table by leaders of the groups who are involved in this process. Each of them will take an opportunity to share a bit about the work to date and certainly be available to engage in discussion and questions with you as well. Behind these leaders are about 65 other individuals who have been part of the teams that they have formed, so that the work you're seeing today is the result of lots of different perspectives, lots of different roles situated in the district and in the community to really present to you this vision of 5 years of success for us as a district. After tonight, we'll take your feedback. They'll continue to engage with their groups to fine tune, adjust, respond to questions that you might have, with the intention of coming before you in early March for another work session. And then later in March, submitting to you for your approval, the strategic plan for the next 5 years. What's projected on the screen is a homepage. And Kinsey, I wonder if you could enlarge that just a bit. The team will be speaking to what's up there as well. And I'm just going to call your attention to this homepage because it contains the components that are by board policy in your purview to vote to approve. The mission, the vision, the strategic priorities, and the strategic goals. What's mentioned at the very bottom of this are the strategic actions, and that's the work that will follow once you approve a goal framework for us to put in place how we'll operationalize our work and focus on achieving those goals. You see represented here proudly the portrait of a graduate as a recommendation to be considered for our vision as a district. It is the long-range vision for who will be walking across our graduation stages each year. And for the students who personify this, that journey begins when they're as young as possible involved in our school district, whether it's a 3K, 4K program, or whenever they happen to move into our district. So you'll see that represented as a shift from maybe some past work that we've done with the district vision. So I'm going to stop there and turn it over to each member of the team to walk you through the particular priority that their team was responsible for. And even though we're going to be presenting this to you in chunks, please know and understand and feel free to ask questions about how all of these things intersect. We're going to present them to you independently, but a successful plan is one that brings the organization closer together. And that's what we're certainly going for in this plan as well. So we're going to start first with academic excellence, our strategic priority number one. And Director of Teaching and Learning, Angie Lacombe, will start us off.
Hi, good evening. Thanks for having us here to talk about our work that we've been doing over the past couple of months. As David said, we worked within small teams, teams that consisted of district administrators, building administrators, curriculum coordinators, teacher teams, and external partners. One of the pieces that our group worked on as we were trying to gather more feedback was to connect with what we called critical partners. And so each person on the team also then went out and spoke with other people who maybe work in the building with them or in the community each time to be able to go and share the work that we discussed and then bring back that work to more to our small group so that we could make adjustments based on that feedback. We took a look at academic excellence that directly connects to the portrait of a graduate in regards to the academic achievers. But our group spent a lot of time talking about how it connects to other areas, in particular, the personal architects. And so we spoke about how academic achievement can speak to some goals around individual learning, students achieving their highest potential in their learning endeavors. We talked about proficiency, and we talked for quite a while and kind of thought that was going to be our goal, is to think about student proficiency. But we expanded that thinking to be able to say we really want students to reach their highest potential and go beyond proficiency. So with that said, our group talked about the academic achievement, but also the college and career readiness pieces, and really looked at those two critical elements as pieces that would help define academic achievement and academic excellence, I'm sorry. With that said, the college and career readiness piece really links to the portrait of a graduate as we think about that architect piece where students are determining their pathways. So you're going to see reflected in our work the idea that students are selecting pathways. Those might lead to AP or dual credit courses. They might lead to industry certifications. And also it's going to reflect the academic achievement that we want to have students seeing. We want to see in students, I should say. We spent a lot of time talking about how we would measure these areas. And so you can see for academic achievement, we focused in on ELA and English language arts and math. And those two areas came across, of course, ELA is very strong in across the nation, but also in Wisconsin right now. So that was definitely an area we wanted to focus on. Mathematics came out in the portrait of a graduate feedback that was received from the community, from students and the community members who responded to that feedback. Specifically, mathematics was called out. And so we wanted to be able to focus on those two key areas. We know that in order to achieve any goal, we have to include all students. And so we focused in on a specific data point from our district report card, the target group outcomes for ELA and math. Again, knowing that in order for us to achieve our ultimate goals, we need to have all students progressing and meeting those achievement points as well. And then in regards to the college and career readiness, we focused in on 4 areas: ACT composite score, graduation rate, students with at least 1 dual credit or an AP course, and earned industry credentials. So those 4 data points would help us to be able to see how well students are geared toward college and career readiness, whether that's college or career. when we decided our goals for the end of 5 years, we took a look at trends within our own district. So we looked at our Green Bay trends for ELA and math, as well as trends for all of the data points really that you see up there, graduation rate, ACT, composite score. And in many cases, we saw that, especially in the academic achievement section, we saw that our trends were trending in small increments. And so in order to really think about this work as visionary work over 5 years, we wanted to make sure that we didn't trends, but we looked across the state of Wisconsin to see what kind of trends we were seeing there. We also looked at large urban districts that are similar to Green Bay to see what trends they had. And then we know we want to increase so that at least we're getting to the state average points, but really our goal is to hopefully go beyond that. So thinking about not only, you'll see sometimes our language is saying that we want to go to that point or exceed the state average. So really trying to extend ourselves as far as we can for our students. One of the areas that we saw in the college and career readiness piece that I'd like to just point out is we have been seeing upward trends in our dual credit and industry credentials. Each year we are increasing sometimes at a rate of 4%, which is great. We're noticing in our AP dual credit courses, though, that there's a discrepancy amongst our student demographic groups. And so that's one area that we want to close that gap. And so we specifically wrote that into our goals because, again, going back to all students, right, means all students. And so if we're going to achieve any goal, we need to make sure that we're taking a look at those different student groups. We believe that there's some very strategic things that we can do to be able to increase students being able to earn those AP dual credit courses. Fortunately, we have many opportunities to take those courses. So a lot of our action steps may be around stronger communication around those courses, ensuring that students know what the courses are all about. One quick example I have just from last week was we had students sign up for freshman students who were eligible to take a AP dual credit course for Spanish. And they were hesitant to take that course. They had the skill set, but they weren't, they were a little nervous to take a course that was called AP Dual Credit. So we went and spoke with them about the benefits of that and how that can eventually help them earn the seal by literacy here in Green Bay, and then also how that would be able to help them earn additional college credits. And so all of the 40 students that we talked to decided that they wanted to take that course, but they were hesitant at first. So it's just an example of how messaging and focusing some of our attention in some of those areas would be able to open more doors for students. In regards to the earned industry credential, the discrepancy between student groups is actually quite proportionate. So that one, we didn't have the variance in that particular piece. We just focused on the overall number of students. And again, we really think that clear focused messaging and making sure that we're telling students about those opportunities will help us to be able to increase those scores over time. Yes.
Is there an area, previously we had conversations about students that have IEPs and that are receiving transition services when they're 13, but also are more, our students that will have community-based programming or opportunities when they're 18 to 21. Is there a way that we can measure our success on that in the college and career readiness part as well? Because I imagine that's students with IEPs is going to be a significant group in that area, that there's probably some discrepancy in there. Is there a way that we can incorporate that in?
We did talk about some of that. Sometimes it's hard to get information that is consistent. So I think I'd have to just look into that a little bit more. One piece though, in regard to that student group is that they are included in that variance that we were talking about. And so we are looking at the variance when we're looking at students taking those the credential and the dual credit or AP courses. But I see your point and can follow up on thinking through that a little more.
I just want to add a quick piece of just definition and clarification to the language used here. The academic achievement areas, everything in that area, the ELA achievement, math achievement, target group, and target group outcomes come from our district report card. And so the definition of a target group is the DPI state identification of the group of students who are performing in the lowest 25th percentile, regardless of demographic makeup of that student group. And so it's an important group to keep a focus on. It's highly representative and varied, but it does represent the group of students who are frankly struggling the most to be successful as learners. So I want to call that out because that's a state identified student group.
Right.
I think one other thing we want to stress on this as well, or focus on, is the academic excellence that we can push as a larger district. So we're not necessarily looking at opportunities at one or two high schools, but making sure all those opportunities are available for students regardless of what high school they go to. And I know some other board members and I have brought that up before. So really tying that into it, if a class is offered at East, but you go to West, is there a way that we can make sure that that's offered to all of our students? We're looking at this as a whole district, not, high school specific or middle school specific with it. So hopefully the board can do whatever they can to help support that as well, or those opportunities.
Yeah, I can definitely see that as being part of our action steps. That's one of the action steps that we have talked about. We are definitely having those discussions, and so I think there's things in the works, but there's always there's room for growth. Yeah, I can think of probably 5 examples right now of places where if you are at a certain school, then you have access to a certain dual credit. So we are working on different opportunities for students in that respect.
Okay.
Katie Selzer, our Director of Pupil Services, led the Thriving Student Body Work Group, and she'll share the snapshot of their work next.
Thank you, David. Good evening, everyone. I will start by providing a little bit of background. I can't read that up there, so because I don't have my glasses, so I'm going to look at my own screen here, but I'll give you a bit of background on our planning team. Much like Angie said, we wanted to get perspective and representation from multiple voices. So we had, I think, 13 or 14 individuals on our planning team. And we've had I believe three meetings so far. The representation came from nurses, co-curricular leadership, as well as teachers, administrators, multilingual learners, social work counselor, community partners, as well as representation from teaching and learning. So I wanted to kind of share who that was, or a portion of that. Our first planning meeting, we really kind of grounded in the portrait of the graduate work and that connection to the work we're doing for strategic planning. And what are the skills, knowledge, attributes that we want our kids to leave, our students to leave with. And so we talked a bit about that. Time was not our friend, and I think some of my colleagues would agree on that. We had just a lot of great conversations, and it was hard to stick to an hour or two of planning time because they're such important discussions to have. So we did do that, and then we did kind of an activity around what does it really mean? Because I think thriving student body really is kind of like, what does that mean to everyone? And then looked at other districts to see what they chose in terms of a definition on that. I'll walk you through just a little bit of where we're at in the planning process. Like I said, we had 3 meetings so far. We came up with a definition. I think we spent a good hour on that alone, and then we came back to it. And I think part of what everybody thought each of those pieces were important. So then I think the question came around, how do we measure some of those things? And so that connection from the definition to the actual critical elements and how closely connected those were. So we did land on 3 critical elements: social and emotional wellness, personal engagement, and then identity and belonging. Let's see, as far as the measurements, or as measured by, that we also had a lot of discussion on that. We kind of went back and forth, and some of the things that we were struggling with in terms of getting to the end, which was the strategic goal, is we identified a lot of things that were really the means of how to get there versus what the actual goal was. And the means on how to get there will come as we continue to plan. So for the critical element of social and emotional wellness, we brought us back to we started last year a panorama survey around social emotional learning, or social emotional wellness. And so we wanted to really measure that through the survey. One of the things that we looked at was there's been some research to show that there's high connection between self-efficacy and self-management and academic outcomes. And we didn't have those in the first 2 surveys we did. So we went back to Panorama to share that we would like to add those elements into the survey. So we did do that. So we don't have a baseline. And so of course our goal would be to be determined on that. Personal engagement, we had a definite, when we were looking at other districts, we were looking at some of the research, everyone came upon the co-curricular participation. And really there's the connection between engagement, academic outcomes, students' attendance, it's all connected to obviously their engagement. And so some of those co-curricular things are co-curricular activities as well as sports clubs, that was a real definite connection. So we wanted to measure that. So our current baseline is 53.4% of students participate at the middle school and 54.1% participate in high school. So then we came upon the question of, do we really have clubs and sports activities that represent or that interest all students? So we really want to work around, look at the offerings we have and really kind of a lot of student voice and choice in that. So that was one of the things. Our end in mind, so the goal, we really looked at data from past years, and if we go back 3 or 4 years, that's really where our participation was. So we want to move ourselves to at least that. I think we increased it by maybe a percentage. So our participation has gone down. And then we looked at attendance. So the attendance, we use the school report card, and the way they measure attendance is that students attend at least 90% or more of the school days. And so currently our baseline is 67.4%. And we would like to meet or exceed state average in students representing 90%, or I'm sorry, students present 90% or more of days. And the state average is currently 80.1. I don't know if that's in your notes or not. Okay. Then lastly, we went into identity and belonging. So the 2 focus areas are the syllabi literacy, as well as the Panorama survey, again, around sense of belonging and then student-teacher relationships. One of the things we wanted to showcase or highlight is that 9.5% of the state's syllabus are students. So we wanted to really highlight that and showcase that these students' superpower is really around being bilingual, bicultural, biliterate. And so we kind of looked into what would a goal be, and 15% we were saying of the state's syllabi literacy. And the test or the way it's awarded is it's around speaking, reading, writing, and listening. And our team is learning more about that from Angie's team. So number 2, we said, again, like I said, Panorama survey around sense of belonging and teacher-student relationships. And you can kind of see the percentage of where we're at. In grades 3 through 5, a 60% a favorable response. And in grades 6 through 12, 31% around sense of belonging. So we have work to do. And then teacher-student relationships, grades 3 through 5, 72% favorable, whereas grades 6 through 12, 43%. Our target, we're still kind of working on, but we kind of set it as 85 and 66 for the sense of belonging and 82 and 75. Lastly, I'll talk through, we had a couple of challenges I wanted to highlight, and I think I mentioned it at first, but time was hard. We could spend a couple days, I think, together as a team and go through a lot of, there was just a lot of discussion, and you want to hear everybody's perspective in order to make sure we are representing everyone. And then lastly is we know that there's a need for adult learning, for our learning, and it's the time. It's the time again, where do we provide that to staff? How do we get it to them? And that it's right size and it's at the right time. So that's all I have. Brian.
Okay, called on by both. Excellent. In regards to the co-curricular participation activities in high school and middle school, kind of tied in the same thing that I mentioned before, make sure we have those opportunities for all our students. One thing that has been mentioned before is making sure transportation is possible for them. And I know we have a partnership with Metro, Green Bay Metro, to get those things set, but I would hope that in the action plan, that's being addressed as well. You know, with the declining enrollment, we're going to have decreasing numbers of students participating. And if we have unified teams that are able to form and compete, and it involves students getting transported from one spot to another, I hope that's not something that makes it more of a hindrance for students to participate. And I could see the same thing in musicals or theater or clubs. If there's clubs at different schools that we can combine into one spot, figuring out a system that will get that transportation there, I think will help, and obviously help our students be engaged and just, you know, improve on all of these areas. But hopefully we can look at some sort of transportation plan to help increase that.
Brian, I see a lot of nodding heads over here. Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
Thank you for that, Brian. Yes, definitely.
Oh, Andrew.
Thank you. So it's whether it's whether it's 10, whether it's 15% of the state having that proportion of the state's seal of biliteracies, seals of biliteracy coming from us is excellent. I'm wondering why technically you could go up to 15 by having the same number of our kids get them and just fewer kids from other places getting them. So I'm just wondering how you came up with a proportion of the state versus just how many more we would get.
Yeah, that's a great question, and it was a challenge to identify a goal for that area. Right now, not every district in the state offers a seal of biliteracy. So the starting place is that the state will be growing and expanding in the number of districts that offer it. In its onset, the seal of biliteracy is going to become a more rigorous undertaking as well, with more of those areas assessed in ways that ultimately will determine whether you get the seal or not. And so it's been a scaling up of accountability for students in the seal of biliteracy. So two things will change. It'll become more rigorous and challenging to achieve it, and more districts will be offering it. And so taking both of those things in mind, that's how we landed on that growth number. Nothing more magical than that.
Lynn.
I have a very naive question, and if this is going to take too long, I can ask it some other time, but I'm unfamiliar with the seal of biliteracy. Back in my days when I was teaching, we didn't ever have that. So can somebody just tell me what is the value of having, I mean, I can understand the value of being bicultural and biliteral and all, biliterate and all, but what is the value to the student beyond that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So one of the pieces that we looked into when we were trying to promote this with students is the workforce aspect of it. So many employers are looking for biliterate employees right now. So that is a big factor for students. Additionally, students can use this for scholarships. You know, we're hoping that, as David said, as more of the state of Wisconsin starts to offer this, that maybe colleges will be looking at it to be able to help students enter college or enter with credits. One of the pieces, just to explain a little bit about the seal of biliteracy, is that it is focusing on a target language. So for example, if a student is studying Spanish or has grown up in a bilingual household and is in our bilingual program, they would need to be able to show that that they have proficiency in reading, writing, speaking, and listening for that target language, so Spanish, but also they have to show that same proficiency in English. And so that's the piece that connects, really, our two groups connect on this goal, in that if you recall, for the academic excellence portion, we're looking at the ACT composite score. In order for a student to earn the seal of biliteracy, you also have to have an ACT score that demonstrates your English proficiency. So really, in order for a student to be able to get the seal of biliteracy, they need to demonstrate that proficiency on the Apple assessment of the target language, which could be Spanish, ASL, Chinese, French are the ones that we're working toward right now. And then also the ACT score. So that's another link for the two of our groups working together in this area.
Go ahead.
First of all, I want to thank you, David, and your team. I think these are very challenging, difficult issues or problems to resolve. And I am excited to see that we are putting together a strategic plan that is very aggressive. I'm looking at these numbers for the next 5 years, and we are expecting to improve or to exceed the state average for many of these achievements. And I'm very happy that we're having this conversation. But I think, again, this is not the final stage of it, and that's why it's in this floor where we could discuss. I'm looking at the academic excellence, and I know that we mentioned a lot about looking at the other districts and model or look at the way that they do things, and then we kind of use that. I would like to challenge your team to do it different, because we can't look at a failure system and duplicate that, okay? Less is more, in my opinion. I remember the days when I have gym, we just go and play ball, and I get an A out of it. Now my kids have to know how volleyball is played, how the rule is. You have to take tests inside gym. I think less is better. A couple of things that I thought that we have the foundation here in our district. For example, we have the gifted and talented school of that name, Da Vinci. The kids in there, and I think I have a wonderful discussion with one of the board members yesterday, that the expectation when you walk into that particular school is that every student felt special. They felt that they're smart and intelligent, that they're there to learn, they're there to achieve. And I feel that we have the foundation. We just have to look at that and duplicate, or at least just mirror that across to our district, and that will work, because I think that they have a high expectation. High expectation is a culture that we create. And that culture reinforces itself within that particular environment. That's how they achieve. And I think that that is something that we have to include in this academic excellence, is the expectation, the high expectation. Also, I know that we are one of the most diverse district in the state, probably in the country. And the challenge to get the parents involved, it's another hurdle. But I would strongly encourage us, your team, to think outside of the box to see if we could get that. We could move the needle on that, because I could see that no matter how wonderful a plan that we have, if the parents is not involved, I think the success rate might not be what we expect it to be. If we could get that, I think that's going to reinforce it. That's going to help. And also the idea for access for the student and the parents. Even if the parents can't speak English, somehow we have to find a way in the district to somehow connect the dot, so we can make the parents feel comfortable and that they're confident that they could call the school and have a solution, or at least give them some pointers so that they could be at home helping their students or their kids. Right now, as just my experience, calling students or calling schools, I will also strongly encourage your team to encourage individuals that answers the phone in our district to be like customer service personnel, not school administrator, customer service, to be the sweetest person on the other side of the line on the phone, so that we encourage people, more people, to contact us if they have any questions about their students or their kids learning with our district. Because I believe that the 60% of the minority students here, I believe that 100%, and the 40% of the other students, I believe that 100% of their mom and dad want them to succeed, want them to have a better life than their own. And so I think this connection, we have to, no matter what, we have to close that gap. Yes, yes.
You were actually hitting on the third strategic priority area, which I think Ms. Parker Hill is going to address, but you're hitting some of the key points that I think will be very helpful in the planning of this. I saw Ingrid listening very intently to what you were suggesting.
Thank you, Vicky. And I am looking forward to hear what Ms. Parker has to share with us because, you know, we may have different definitions how we. So I am looking forward to that portion of it, but because I thought that was critically also important, this academic excellence piece. That's why I mentioned that. So, but thank you so much. I will yield my time back to the floor.
Is it my turn? Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for having us. I am so thankful to be able to come in after academic excellence, Angie and Katie. So I'm not feeling the greatest, so just know that I have lots of notes, but I want to stay on track and be mindful of everybody's time. So, family and community engagement comes in many forms and has a significant impact on our students both now and in the future. By focusing on areas such as social emotional development, educational standards, technology and digital media, family dynamics, and global awareness, we are preparing children for an ever-changing world and for careers and interests that have yet to emerge. I will use the term family interchangeably with the parent to include all caregivers and family members in one's life. This approach acknowledges the diverse structures and roles within families that contribute to a child's development and education. When we began the Portrait of a Graduate Journey, we knew it had to be a collective effort to ensure the framework reflects the community's values and goals. The voices of families and communities are crucial, and this cannot be a one-time effort because schools cannot do it alone. Our visionary approach to the strategic priority of family and community engagement started with the realization that today's kindergartners will graduate around 2037. How can we work together with our schools, our families, and communities to achieve the Portrait of a Graduate goal? Studies indicate that when family engagement is consistently intentional, it has a profound positive effect on students. There's improved academic achievement, better test scores, improved attendance, they complete high school, and they pursue some form of higher education. There's better social skills. There's better family engagement, often experiences positive school climates. And there's increased motivation and engagement. For our team, our strategic planning team, we had a variety of departments and people to be a part of this work. From teaching and learning and literacy, central registration, technology, multilingual learners. We had our youth serving organizations from our collaborators. We had principals, managers of student engagement, director of elementary engagement, Title I program, and then community partnerships. The question is, what kind of engagement do we believe in is essential for enhancing the academic, behavioral, and social emotional development for our students? When we first came to create our critical elements, we had three. One was data-driven empowered engagement. The other was purposeful partnerships. And then the next one was global inclusivity. We felt that global inclusivity was a critical piece considering our district is about 40 languages. We also felt that being data-driven and empowering engagement for our families was crucial. As we went to dissect it a little bit more, we narrowed it down. And global inclusivity is actually something that needs to be across the board. It cannot just be housed in family and community engagement. And the same with data-driven, empowered engagement as well. So we withdrew those because now they live everywhere. And now we have two critical elements. One is purposeful family engagement, and the other is purposeful community engagement. Purposeful family engagement, we need to have a universal system district-wide for family engagement. We have lots of great pieces that's happening across the board, but we need something universal. So that is one thing that we are planning to do. When we looked at the school success plans through the search words of family and parent, about 50% of our schools had something in their plan. We would like to see 100% of schools having an intentional family engagement goal. The other piece is schools to do for us to have a universal family engagement survey. That is something that we do not have. There are certain schools that do surveys, but increasing that to have a universal plan would be key. Now, I want to share with you the difference between family involvement and family engagement, because sometimes those words are interchangeable. Family involvement and family engagement are district concepts that play different roles in a child's education. Family involvement, the role is often seen as a more passive role where parents follow the school's lead and contribute as needed. Parent-teacher conference, volunteering, school events. Family engagement, however, is seen as an active, ongoing collaboration that fosters a stronger connection between the school and families, leading to better student outcomes. When my colleagues were talking earlier, I couldn't help but think about how many families don't know about AP courses or dual credit. And how do we get those messages out earlier? We need to scaffold this approach. I personally touched my first AP chemistry book last week. That was a realization for me, and I think about how many people do not know that that is an opportunity for their kids. And so how do we help get this message out and empower parents to ask questions? And so that is where this parent engagement, family engagement will come in at. Excuse me. The next piece is purposeful community engagement. This is one that was a little bit more of a challenge, because when you hear community engagement, what do you think of? We have lots of great relationships and partnerships within our district already. But there's two ways that we look at community partnership. One is our direct service for our students, and the other is our indirect service for our students. Both of them are equally valuable. Thank you. So when we are looking at our direct service for our community partnerships, we want to align those with our portrait of a graduate. And we also want to add a family engagement component to that. The other piece is when we're looking at our indirect service, excuse me, sorry. Places like places like Carvana, that's an indirect partnership with us. They helped us with Portrait of a Graduate. But increasing those and acknowledging them and building on those. So for our baseline, there's a couple of things we don't have baselines on because this is new. We'll be creating those this year. And then within the next 5 years, we'll look at the baseline for this year and then find the 5-year goal that we'll work toward. Okay. Questions?
Ingrid, Ms. Parker, I wanna thank you. I mean, you are sick and you show up tonight. This is a good example of dedication and how much passion you have for the students here in Green Bay. I want to thank you for that. I think the ideas here are wonderful, and I think you are correct. It's something that we are now just venture into it, and I think there will be a lot of learning because there will be a lot of different things that you'll see. The question that I have, and I would encourage your team to consider, is the idea that you mentioned that a lot of parents don't have the resource or don't have the proper information to make a good decision for their sons or daughter that's attending our district, whether that would be AP classes, whether that's, construction program, whether that's, all the wonderful programs that we have. The question is, where do we communicate this so that it's more effective? Is it freshman year? Is it starting middle school? Where's ground zero for us so that it's the most impactful for families? Are we starting sixth grade where I have an opportunity to look at my child, how their study habits are? That's where we need to focus. So ground zero, where do we need to pinpoint that before we could actually implement these? So thank you, Ingrid. Wonderful.
Thank you. I would like to share, I believe that we have to take a scaffolding approach to that. It can't just be middle school that they're learning, or it can't just be in high school that they're learning. We need to plant the seeds when they are in kindergarten, 4K. Even though their parents might not necessarily be thinking about college, some people are, some people are not, some people are just trying to get through life. But if we can plant those seeds, because as you said, our families want better for their kids. Excuse me. That is why they're sending them to school, to be better, to do better than what they are. And so it is helping them see, plan, and planting those seeds as we go. So it's not just you hear it once and then you don't hear it again to middle school or high school. It's planning, it's making it part of the culture and creating that culture of excellence for them. So yes, early on, let's do it.
Lynn.
I just have a question about the baseline measures and the anticipated dates for having those. You say in the 2025-26 school year, can we anticipate that maybe in this calendar year, like first semester, that we'll have baseline?
First semester being 25, 26. Anything is possible.
Anybody else? Okay.
Okay, and in our fourth domain, Executive Director of Human Resources, Mike Freese will present.
Hi, everybody. I learned yesterday that I am a Zennial. Does anybody know what a Zennial is?
No.
Melissa and I are both Zennials. We're in between Generation X and Millennial. We're this micro generation of 1979 to 1983. You might be in there too, yeah. I mention it because our workforce, right? It's gotta be a thing, right? Our workforce currently consists of folks who are in their teens through their 80s. So when we talk about a thriving workforce, it's really hard to nail that down as being one thing that meets everybody's needs. And so we've had, as Katie referenced, we've had robust discussions as a thriving workforce group talking about what matters. And we all filter it through what matters to us, but that might be based on all of our own individual identities and what we bring to the table. So having the opportunity to have multiple participants from multiple areas represented on the team has been very important. Having folks from the community as well as throughout the organization has been very important. Having the chance to check in with team members outside of the committee meetings has been very important because it keeps shaping our thinking. Essentially, this group, when we started talking, we found ourselves vacillating at first between should we be articulating critical elements, goals, things 5 years from now about what we would expect of our employees, or what we as an employer should be providing to our employees so that they thrive. And I think what you'll see in what we came up with is a blend of each, that it's kind of a two-way street. It's a mutual relationship. We want our staff, we want all of our employees to be here. We want them to stay. Just like students, we want them to learn and grow. We want them to be healthy and well. And we want them to see this and their work as a calling, as a career that has a progression. And so that's reflected in what we've initially come up with for our critical elements, how we intend on narrowing down how we measure them. We've established baseline measurements for most of the areas and have outlined some strategic goals. With regards to being here, we're talking about staff participation in being at work. And when you think about the sorts of things that contribute to a well-rounded employee and a well-rounded employer, they provide things that allow for employees to utilize leave. There's bereavement policies and personal leave and sick leave. And so when you establish a we'd like you to be here goal, you have to keep in mind that as an employer, you also provide them opportunities to not be at work at times. And so we initially came up with might look like some verbal gymnastics here, but essentially the percent of staff that have 10 or less student contact days per year where they've missed at least part of the day due to an absence. And we've excluded personal leave and vacation because why would we try to set goals that seem to contradict what we're giving them a benefit to use potentially? So we've targeted some spots. Our baseline measure is 69% of our current staff are meeting that criteria. And so we set an objective of 90%. So how will we come up with some action steps and some strategies and ideas of how to move towards that? That's part of the work that would happen once approved as indicated by David at the onset. Looking at staff that are not just here, but choose to stay. We want people to feel like this is a place where they are included and where they belong. And so having an experienced workforce that has the knowledge, skill, experiences, and then can be wise in what they do. We've listed some baseline measures for different categories of employee groups, reflective of how long have they been in the district. Administrators' baseline measure is 14 years of experience in our district, not 14 years of experience in our district as an administrator, but across their entire scope of experience, right? So they may have started in one role, moved their way through, and they currently are in administration. Same thing you would see in these other areas as well. How long have you been in the district? And seeking to support continued retention. Again, then the other metrics do kind of speak to this similar things. Like I said, we want folks to be here. We want them to stay. We are a learning organization. And so because we have transitioned how we track professional learning data away from a previous platform, and we've been integrating a new platform that Angie's team has been leading, we recognize that as we expand out, we have other data points or other documentation sources we would need to establish to kind of clarify how 100% of our staff have the opportunity to participate in meaningful professional learning based on district priorities. And we talk about, we want this to be a calling, so a career opportunity for career progression. So we've listed some data there where folks could earn additional degrees or certifications. Those would be more formal. Brian has spoken previously idea of credentials that could be earned by employees or staff in different groups as they progress throughout the organization as well. That would make them eligible for consideration for additional jobs. And again, finally, the last one I mentioned again would be the idea of ensuring that folks are safe, physically and mentally well, and that this is they are injury and accident free annually, and so keep improving those areas. So that's kind of what we're looking at.
Okay, Brian.
Like, I appreciate the work that went into this, and I understand the gist with it. I would hope in the action items, and I think it kind of ties into the staff attendance, and I'm hoping I'm reading this correctly with it, that we obviously still want staff to take sick days if they're sick, you know, and looking at some of these options on here, and I hope that under adaptability and open-mindedness and passion and drive with earning another credential or degree, that there's going to be some benefit for the staff if they do that. That will continue to work with partner groups like GBEA as far as getting micro credentials and figuring out a way to recognize that, whether it's in an evaluation or, you know, if you get a second master's or whatever. You know, we've obviously got to be creative on how we can. Wow. And how we can reimburse and make sure our employees are recognizing the benefit of that. I also hope that in the action items that we have a decrease in staff meetings and making sure that we're valuing the time of our employees and that we continue to address that. I know that has been a focus beforehand from the board and that's been addressed, but that continues in that workload and the retention of valuing our educators' time and making sure that meetings are worthwhile and that we're focused on it and that we're giving them time in their classroom and those other options. Same with other work, you know, our other employee groups on there. So I genuinely hope that that is considered as part of one of the working goals in there is what can be said as an email, what can be, you know, cutting down on meetings where possible. So thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Anybody else? Brick and then Andrew.
Just want to make sure that we are including in order for the workforce to thrive, one thing that feeds into that is a solid organizational structure. And so what I would ask you is in your, because the next phase of all of this is obviously a task list of things to do. What reduces the stress on a workforce is if you are properly organized and linked to how to get the overall job done, that there's no redundancies or overlaps or confusion of who does what in your organization. A reduction or an identification, elimination of those things contributes mightily to a thriving workforce. The other thing is feedback and performance reviews. They have to be very deliberate throughout the whole process of an employee's life cycle, starting with expectation setting on the front end, making sure that there shouldn't be a day that goes by where an employee doesn't know where they stand, and giving them the first opportunity to make corrections to their pathway because they understand what the expectations are. That has to be part and parcel of that whole thing. And then I would also ask that in looking at how a workforce thrives, are the work processes that all organizations or all entities do, and making sure that we have identified anything that gets in the way of their achieving their goals and objectives in their workday. And that's a continuous process and feedback of, hey, you know, there's probably a lot of folks walking around very frustrated in what they do, but they don't feel like they have an outlet to voice that concern or have contribute to fixing the problem that they know that exists there. And then the other one that I would ask is that we have a more deliberate leadership pipeline to develop talent into these senior and next level leadership roles that identify a person's ability to move from the role of managing their self or managing small groups to managing larger groups to managing enterprises or large segments of the business, and that they have what we call turn potential, that there's an assessment done to gauge their ability to lead at that next level, without it being a surprise to everybody that, oh, lo and behold, they can't function at this level because we've never done the assessment on their ability to function at that level. And so that's really the things that all feed into a thriving workforce. And the measurements will obviously come in with all of the results from the other groups here. It'll tie right into it all. So you're almost like operations and finance and the CFO in that sense, in that what you do reaches horizontally across all of these other functions. So just something to think about.
I very much appreciate that. Thank you.
Andrew.
Yes, I did check, Zennials, I'm gonna say Zennials is real because it was added to the Oxford Dictionary for approximately the ages 77 to 83 because of overlap between the two generations. And a term coined originally by pretty well-known investigative journalist Sarah Stancourt. So the first group that played Oregon Trail and messaged on AOL Instant Messenger. Although I did those things, I was a little before that. But
Thank you, Andrew.
no, a little too old.
All right, Brian.
Building off of what Rick also mentioned with the feedback and evaluation methods, and Rick, if I misspeak, just correct me on this. I think it's also key that we continue to do that with our partners that we have, so when we're looking at evaluation methods and just that constant feedback, seeing what best practices for throughout the country and anything that's innovative on it, partnering with our other groups on that as well. So Rick, does that make sense what I was trying to say?
I got you. Yes, sir.
All right. Anybody else? All right. Do you have more to offer?
I'm just gonna tie one piece together, and Mr. Crossan referenced it a second ago. We had previously come before you with 5 domains, one including operational excellence, and so it was as so many of the leaders shared here, there were a lot of ahas that came through the process. And probably a significant one was this role of operations in achieving the goals that we're setting forward here. Mr. Mills, you gave a good example of, in order to meet that co-curricular participation, there's a transportation element to that if we don't have that in place, we're still going to be highly limited by where kids go to school and what limits are in place based on where that is. And so that's a great example of how operations has to flow through this entire plan. It's still operational excellence. It is timely, it is proactive, and it's absolutely necessary for this plan to work. However, it doesn't exist out on some island by itself. It is so thoroughly integrated into each of this that when you see the actions that follow, you will see the language of operational excellence, because that is going to be a necessary ingredient for any of these goals to be met.
Hang on, Lynn and then Brian.
Are you saying that we're not going to have that 5th domain of operational excellence anymore?
We're not presenting that to you as its own domain, correct?
Brian.
I would hope when we look at this that we also, we had talked about partnerships with community organizations. And I think, as we mentioned before, when we were talking about the referendum, that the city is obviously, I don't know what percentage of population lives within the city limits of the district, but that's a natural partner for some of these things because it benefits the cities as well. So if we can figure out that transportation issue with the city, that makes Green Bay more attractive to live in, because if you have a water polo team, which I don't even know if it exists, that gives us that opportunity to combine them up. And that's something other districts aren't necessarily doing. So which obviously helps the city get more people, all that stuff with it as well. So hopefully we can continue to partner with the city and figure out some way to make that work. So.
Go ahead.
Thanks, everybody. I think at the very first slide, you kind of outlined kind of the what's next. are we going to be asked to approve what we've seen today? Or is there that last component, Rick referred to it as like the task list. I don't see it as a task list, right? But when we look at these, this feels like the first step, and it's probably the easiest step of setting those targets. But organizationally, as we move from Monday night into Tuesday, the question rapidly becomes, how are we going to, and what initiatives, and how are we going to spend our money, right? And put in place a prioritization framework to say, do this, not that, because it aligns with our KPIs that we set, because I think everyone will agree that especially in academic excellence, they are aggressive. And I can't look back over the last 10 years and see evidence that we will move so rapidly, up on this scale. So it feels like there are some fundamental things that we will have to, or we will need to plan to do different, right, than we have been doing today, because we have been teaching. Everyone has been coming, and this is a functioning organization. So along with these, I'm really looking for, that high level roadmap of how we get from point A to point B, because in some of these KPIs, they're like 5 evaluation points between now and 2030, right? They're 5 report cards that, and so as a board, I'm looking for ways to get early indicators of success or failure or needing to pivot and things like that. And that's really where I'm interested. I mean, this was a lot of good work, and it's necessary work, but it's that first step along a journey where everyone in the room is going to go back, and sooner or later, these initiatives are going to lay on top of what's happening already, and what does that look like, right? So I'm very interested in understanding what the board is going to be called on to kind of approve, because this seems a tad early, right? I would like to kind of see some paired, over the next 5 years, here's some really strong changes or thematic initiatives that we're really going to focus on. And I know that some of these exist, but from kind of from a perspective of showing the delta between what's in place now and what we're going to be doing is really where I'm very interested in understanding, in my role as a board member, how I can help support, fund, right, and make sure that we govern that progress, because there's an adage in project management: the time you lose at the beginning of the project, you never get back, right? And you can't wait until year 2, 3, 4 to start making that significant progress. So I appreciate the presentation. I really look forward to seeing kind of what the next phase is of the project.
Okay. Anybody else? Cool.
Just a final thought. I think that, there's one thing that most companies talked about is the idea of a continuous improvement, okay? And I know that these goals are aggressive. I don't think that, overnight we're going to achieve it, but it's the idea that we will continuously improve in this process. And that's what I'm looking for. And also in any kind of projects, whether you're in business, own a company, or whether in the school district, I think that plans are wonderful. Plans, anyone could come up with a wonderful plan of action, but the idea is whether or not we're going to execute it on the front line, whether that's going to be effective. And if we could convince the people to be part of that, and they're excited to help you do that, I think we're going to have a chance to hit these numbers. But outside of that, thank you.
Okay. All right.
Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Take care, Andrew.
Yeah. All right, we're moving on to education. That will be facilitated by Brian.
Thank you. I'm very excited about all of these, but I'm very excited about the first one we're talking about. So Amy Fish and Laurie MacArthur are going to come up. Anyone else with you? And this is talking about the Nicolay Elementary School name. So if you could share with us, I'd appreciate it.
Good evening. Thanks for the time tonight. We're really excited to be here in front of you all to talk about Nicolay and the work that they've been doing within the community school strategy. I'm Amy Fish. I'm the Associate Director of Community Partnerships and Grants, and I am here with others that are representing the work of community schools. So we're here tonight to talk about Nicolay Elementary School. In 2018, I'm going to start by backing us up to 2018 when Howe became Howe Elementary Community School, and it was identified as the flagship community school within Green Bay Area Public Schools, meaning that we were going to learn from this flagship and hopefully, when the time was right, grow. So in 2021, Nicolay started to learn alongside of Howe Elementary School what it meant to be a community school, diving into the strategy. And in 2.5 years ago, our Brown County United Way anchor partner had its first investment into the community school strategy. Since then, in August, through Fund 80, we were able to hire Nicolay's first community schools resource coordinator, Megan here. And the work of community schools is becoming alive at Nicolay, and we are here in front of the board tonight. Their name reflect to the school community and the larger community, the work of community schools that is happening by changing the name to Nicolay Elementary Community School. And I'm going to hand it over to Lori, who's going to talk a little bit more about what's happening within their building.
Hi.
Hi.
Thanks for listening to us. It's been a long journey waiting for this and hoping that we could get to this point. A lot of work from teachers that have come. My back, yeah. Because they know how important it is and we've been working for a while. So yeah, I got a nice Christmas present before in December just to hear that, you know, we might move forward with this, and that was really special. So what we're gonna do, or what we're hoping to do with our United funds that we've gotten so far right now, is to do some signage to, if we're approved, to change the outside signage, as you see up on the thing, as far as all around our building. And then we also have a community room to be able to acknowledge that we have a community room in process. And then along with that, we're trying to change some of the, we would like to make more bright and colorful for kids, because we know that we want them to belong there and that this is where they want to be, to inspire and to work together. So we're looking at doing some signage in our inside of our building, along with hopefully artists coming in and doing a little work for us that kind of create our together is better, and what we offer for the kids at Nicolay. So so we'd like to do a lot of that work, and we're in the process of trying to, you know, get some things rolling there. And then next, I'm going to give it off to Megan Crystal, who is our community schools coordinator. And just a little funny story is we hired her and we said we were going to do a slow roll. We were just going to walk, and she was going to learn from Diana at Howe and everything. And then we found out that we got money, and now it's been a fast roll. We're rolling, and we're trying to put a lot of things in place, and she's going to share what we have going on right now, and that we've just started a couple months ago.
Good evening. I'm Megan Crystal, and as Lori mentioned, I'm honored to serve as Nicolay's Community School Resource Coordinator. Having started this last August, it's been a really exciting journey thus far, and I'm really excited to be here tonight to talk with you all about the official expansion, hopefully, of our community school title. So just to illustrate kind of in pictures what community school, the essence of community schools is for us. And I don't take credit for many of these things were already, the foundation was set before I started. They've worked really hard at Nicolay. They have very dedicated staff. As you can see, many of them are here tonight. So, but really this is giving you just an idea of what the staff works so hard at Nicolay to offer our families and students through various activities. We have family bingo, a cooking club. Lori's done a really awesome run walk club that students love, and then a really fun culmination of a color run at the end of the school year. We've partnered with different community partners to do different celebrations, like our Hispanic Heritage Celebration we held in October, and also martial arts is a new initiative that we started once we received the support of the United Way funds. And that's been a really awesome program. We've held in the mornings before school. We've had over 60 kids coming before school to participate in martial arts. And this is just a few highlights. We also do many other things at Nicolay, including parent cafes. I have a list here. I want to make sure I mention, but really these also to reiterate that these are all driven by the students, staff, and community members through a needs assessment. So we, in the past, I wasn't part of it specifically, but ask families and students and staff, what are their interests and needs, and we drive what we're offering based on that information. So that includes our art club, where students really wanted opportunities to have more art. So we're offering an art club starting in the end of the month. We've partnered with Green Bay Martial Arts, as I mentioned, Family and Child Care Resources of Northeast Wisconsin. We've done many different activities with them, including parent cafes. We have an upcoming Black History Month celebration that we're working with them. So many different opportunities for our students and families to be engaged. And we're excited to continue that work. Yeah, so that's kind of where we're at. A lot is going on. We're very excited about it. We're excited about the expansion and the use of our new space in the future. So that's a little bit about what's happening at Nicolay.
Can I just
Yeah.
ask you, did you say you have 60 kids come in the morning to do martial arts?
We do. So
Wow.
it's 2 days a week, 30 kids come, and then the other another 30 children are coming. But yes, between 7:50 and 8 they arrive, and then from 8 to 8:30 they participate in martial arts. And we were surprised that almost everyone is coming. We thought there's really no way we'll accept 30, maybe 15 or 20, but nearly 30 every session so far. So it's been pretty exciting to see. And that was one of their top interest areas, and you can see that they really wanted to do that.
Yeah, I'm impressed.
Yeah,
Very
so
impressed.
it's exciting.
I just wanted to add, I fully appreciate this, and I think you're glossing over a really, really big part of what you do. And the community school model is something that I was advocating for when I ran. I'm glad that we have another opportunity here. And I understand some of those are great picture opportunities on there, and it's great work, but the real great work that you're doing is making those connections within our community to meet students on a different level. And I'm looking at the National Education Association's website where they're talking about community schools, and it is a deep, in-depth process where I'm just going to highlight for a couple of the board members, anyone that's watching, community schools focus on what students need in the community, truly need to succeed, and that you're taking on the challenges of developing a deep understanding of the hopes and visions of the students, staff, and families and community members, and pulling together those teams to get the root causes of the challenges. So when we're looking at these community school models and we're partnering with different organizations and looking at the 6 pillars that are out there, this isn't a Green Bay idea. This is a national movement that has taken place throughout the country, and a lot of groups participating in it, and the NEA is one of the leading groups with it. So the fact that we can participate in that and really dig into those social issues and making sure our students are getting the needs that they have is fantastic. And I fully appreciate the engagement of different activities, but getting Shop Go Optical and some of the other community groups in there to meet those basic needs, you are doing fantastic work. I realize you're asking about signage and making sure a sign over the community room and some of that stuff, which is necessary, but the connections that your school is making throughout our community is fantastic. And I hope that we can expand it more throughout the district on those two things. I think that is how we fundamentally change public education and meet the needs of the students. So the people that are working on that are doing a great job, and I'm hoping the board can continue to support that in whatever way is possible. So thank you for what you're doing.
Good. So just a question about how this proceeds.
Sorry. No, it's me, not you. Go ahead.
I'm just wondering, are we going to have a resolution next meeting and we will vote to, okay, thank you.
Cool.
Lori, thank you so much. Good to see you again. I haven't worn that T-shirt that you gave me though. It's still very nice and in my closet, so very nice. And listen, I appreciate this because this to me shows strength and that you have a support team. And I mean, obviously all your teachers are behind you back there. So this is a good example of what we could do when we come together and we could achieve. So thank you so much, ladies. Thank you.
Other one. Yeah, and the other thing that we've added that I forgot when I was talking was, and it wasn't through community schools, but it is part of the community schools model is we just have been approved and got a provider for mental health, which was a big part of what we need at our school. That is another component of, the things that our kids need. And we're starting, actually, we rolled right along with it after the meeting last week, and we have parents that have kids set up on Thursday this week to start getting some good help for what some of the needs that they have. So
Would you be able to expand just a little bit on the partnership with Brown County United Way? What they're doing to help out?
Yeah, absolutely. So Brown County United Way has been our anchor partner since we began this journey. So within that role, they, we've been learning alongside each other for a long time. And then in 2023, they had their first historic investment into community schools. At that time, it was just how. So there's been a lot of learning since that around what are the appropriate data points, what are the outcomes and indicators that we want to be tracking collaboratively. And in addition, community schools just isn't about what's happening within the walls of the community, right? So what can Brown County United Way provide us around what they're learning with community that we can be supporting in the schools, and vice versa? What are we learning in the schools that they should really be tackling out in the community? So then in November, they had another second installment into an investment in community schools that is expanding the strategy across the district.
Thank you. Anyone else? Any other questions on it? All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Guys.
And moving on, we are looking at the Head Start self-assessment. And it looks like Rachel's online for us. So
Yes, good
go
evening to
ahead.
all of you, and thank you for welcoming. I apologize about being online, but I am also a little under the weather. I would have loved to be there tonight. I'm here tonight to present the key findings from our 24-25 Head Start Self-Assessment Improvement Plan. This year, we asked our staff and stakeholders 5 critical questions. How do we achieve excellence in the areas of attendance, family engagement, student health, staff wellness, and then our BLT also looked at our school readiness goals. Our self-assessment process identified several strengths, including strong community partnerships, positive family feedback, and effective teaching strategies. However, we continue to face challenges with chronic absenteeism, post-pandemic declines in parent engagement, and rising mental health needs for both our students and our staff. To address these challenges, our improvement plan focuses on increasing staff training for supporting students with behavior that is challenging to us, expanding our attendance procedures to support our families, and improving the onboarding process of certain key positions such as our paraprofessionals. We're also prioritizing our family engagement through improved communication, additional events that build relationships and create that reciprocal relationship, and more opportunities for families to share their input and ideas for our program. Additionally, we continue to partner with community health providers to help ensure students will meet the health requirements more efficiently that are required by the Office of Head Start. We have utilized many of these findings from our self-assessment report going forward as we write our new 5-year program goals, which you'll learn more about next month as we present to you our new grant proposal.
Thank you. Any questions? All right, thank you.
I believe I'm
And
going
then,
next yourself.
yep, selection
Sorry.
criteria is up next.
All right. Also, you've received our selection criteria. Annually, our program updates our selection criteria for our students, which aids our program in finding the most potentially vulnerable 3- and 4-year-olds within our community. We are proposing 2 changes for the upcoming school year. First, the Office of Head Start has released a new regulation that enables programs to be able to account for excessive housing costs when we're determining the income for our families. So for example, if a family that makes $60,000 a year has housing costs that exceed $18,000 per year, we could subtract those costs from their total gross income and adjust their income as far as Head Start is concerned to be $42,000 per year. This would mean that some families that were not previously eligible for services would now be eligible, which is critical to our community considering the cost of housing has risen significantly when incomes haven't necessarily. Secondly, at the suggestion of our policy council, we have added points for students facing food insecurity. One of our strong community partners, the UW Extension FoodWise program, has shared with us their survey for determining food insecurity, and any families facing that insecurity would receive 5 additional points toward their total score as determined by our selection criteria. Those are the only 2 changes that we're proposing this year. Everything else remained the same from previous years.
Any questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you so much.
And moving on, we have David Johns for our mid-year literacy update.
Hello, and thank you for this opportunity to share really just a brief update on our literacy program, particularly our assessments of our K-3 students as part of the Act 20 requirements. The last time we got together to talk about literacy at the board table, I was able to share with you and some other partners the big lift that was ahead for our staff as it related to administering the screener and the diagnostic assessment for students in our K-3 program. Many of the teachers and teacher leaders in the room with us now are responsible for that big lift, and my appreciation goes out to them and to everyone involved in capturing this really important information about where our students are as readers so that we can we can continue to do the great work of helping them grow, thrive, with literacy being the gateway to so much of the success in their life. I want to share with you just a few snapshots of that process. So over the last 3.5 weeks, we've screened a total of 4,650 students in our K-3 program. That was done during the school day, that was done during class time, that was done in a combination of teachers working with partners in their classrooms, teachers working directly with students while other students were engaged in independent and group work, and all of the various mechanisms that our staff did to be able to capture the screener data. As those students were screened, if you remember last time, the screener answers a very basic question, and that is what percent of our students are on track to be successful with grade level expectations, and what percent of our students are at risk of not being successful on grade level expectations. That at-risk threshold is determined as the 24th percentile or lower of national norms. And so any student who by the screener would have been in the 24th percentile or lower had the diagnostic administered as well. So all that took place over the last three weeks. The window on the diagnostic just closed, and our teachers are now working very hard to develop reading plans for those students who are in that 24th percentile or lower to outline a path forward for them to become successful and become successful still within this school year. Screener results taken as a whole, you know, data does not have any emotion. It's just data, and we decide what we want to apply to it. And so I'll just share what that screener yielded us, and then I'll share a few other observations. When those 4,650 K-3 students were screened, 54% of them were screened at a level that was at or above the 25th percentile. So these are students that would be predicted to be successful in core instruction with likely some in-class support and differentiation, but that essentially would be our students who are tracking toward grade level expectation with some degree of assistance. Among those students, our kindergartners represented the highest group of students who were at or above, and that was 60% of our kindergartners. And that's upheld with Lexia data and some of the other data points that we've talked about as well. What we've learned, shared with you in the closing slide last time, was some things that we anticipated that we were identifying as challenges, and we were, I'm not going to lie, a little bit crossing our fingers and hoping it would go smoothly. That doesn't happen by accident. So what we learned was that the work of pre-planning and layered messaging was important to bring clarity to the field around something as important as this. We learned that having partners available to classroom teachers to sometimes do the assessment or sometimes work with other students while the teacher is doing assessments is essential. And some teachers welcomed partners in. Other teachers, after a day of getting started with this, said, we've got it, we're going to keep going. And what's most important is that they knew they had partners available to them. We learned the value of a well-placed teacher workday at the end of the assessment cycle, which was last Friday, providing our elementary teachers an opportunity to take that important data, turn it into the necessary parent communication, and begin starting on the reading plans, which don't just materialize out of thin air. They require a significant amount of effort to establish. We learned about the technology in the diagnostic. There's a component of the diagnostic where a student actually would speak into a microphone, and then there's a recording, and sophisticated technology listens and monitors and reports out the student's strength against the criteria. As we've learned in a few cases that students with dialects, accents, ambient noise in the room, sometimes that as great as that technology is, it picked up other things, and teachers have the ability to go back in and read the transcript and override. But that's an area where we're still exploring how helpful is the technology, if we might have to go in and touch on those. So that was a learning that we didn't anticipate but came about, definitely. So those are some things that I wanted to share by way of updates. Again, celebrating the hard work of our teachers to capture this important information about our students as readers, and where we stand at this moment of really moving forward and helping our kids grow.
Just have one comment with that as well. That screening was the 10-day window, that we also had one weather day within that, correct?
Yes. Yes.
Oh, sorry.
Remember, the 10 days were 10 calendar days. So, yeah.
So good job to our staff for getting that accomplished and the district for supporting and having that set. So, Laura.
I can't, I can't quite get over that number, that 4,650 students. Like that's just incredible that our teachers were able to do that over a very short period of time. I just want to, I don't know how many of them are listening, just give them my profound thanks for doing that. And I know this data is very important as we make our way through our new literacy program. And I don't know, I'm just really blown away by that. I just want to say that.
James.
Yeah, thanks for the observations in the data. if I remember our conversation correctly, we had originally estimated much more than 46% of the population needing some sort of diagnostic out there. So that's really good news. But I also remember that when we talked about the heavy lifting and everyone kind of turned ashen, it was like right now, right? It's where the screener, then the diagnostic, and then you had to follow that with all of the learning plans. So am I to understand that in that teacher workday, you were able to do all of the parent communications and we're now in the process of just laying out those plans, and how is that going?
Providing the diagnosis was completed by the work day. So for every student that all the students, the screener was completed, but for the students that the diagnostic was completed by the day before, the work day, because we didn't have students in school that day, teachers would have had what they needed for the parent communication, short of the reading plan that has yet another parent, please acknowledge that you received. And so the staff is in that work right now. So nothing to report by way of trends on that, but we provided a template that is, they may disagree with me, but it's significantly stripped down and streamlined from the 21-page template we were given by DPI to say, here, use this. This will make it easy. It's already written for you, 21 pages. We significantly streamline that down. And so ideally with a simpler tool in their hand to create this, and knowing that we have our tools that are used universally like Lexia, and a high quality instructional materials, that a lot of those building blocks are in place.
Andrew?
I too am, of course, I'm glad to hear that it went well and our students are doing perhaps better than percentage-wise than we thought. We had fewer students in need of remediation. My happiness about this is the foundation for it is a question I had at a previous meeting where it was where you confirmed that this is what this is, or as close to what we would have done if it was up to us anyways. And I hope that things continue to go that way. I've never been one to have much interest in rolling over for a standardized test because someone state, someone federal said to do it. But if this is a screener that's going to cause a very chaotic period of time, but good individualized recommendation that actually guides instruction, then it sounds like this is doing what it's supposed to do. I hope though that we continue to have a lot of input, including from not just committees, but rank and file staff. What is this doing? Obviously, there's a trade-off of kid time to do this. Are we getting something meaningful and valuable out of it? And as it goes on, are we continuing to?
Yeah, thank you for that. I'll just come back to that conversation we had when you raised the question, and Director of Literacy, Linda Teskey, responded again with her belief, and under that belief that instructionally, the focus that we're putting on literacy is absolutely the right thing to do. You need data to inform that path. What we would continue to advocate for and push back on is the rigidness of that timeline and what feels like a breakneck pace in order to collect something so important and so valuable.
Rick?
David, I apologize if you've already said this, but of the children now who need a plan to be put in place, how many of them or what percentage of them are already on an IEP that has a reading component to it?
I don't have that information today, but if a student was in that situation, predominantly the plan that is in place within their IEP really does become their reading plan. They still need a reading plan. They still need a reading plan, but the actual bulk of it and the focus of it is primarily identified through their IEP and the reading support plan that's included within there. I do not have the number for you today.
Do you anticipate it being, whatever the plan is, something different than what they're currently doing? Or is that dictated in, through this new mandate?
When you say what they're currently doing, you mean the way a student with an IEP is supported in reading? It's going to vary heavily on what the diagnostic told the teacher about where that student's needs are. And remember, the screener answers basically a yes or no question. The diagnostic really starts to provide that profile of where skills need to be built up. So that's going to be really dependent on whether a student's current IEP matches the skill profile that the diagnostic reveals.
And Rick, I may be incorrect on this, but also with it being a younger age, the likelihood of an IEP being established and having a reading goal on there is probably less because the grades that we're looking at screening and any IEP that has a reading goal will be part of it. So I don't know how much we'd be identifying that the student would be receiving an IEP at that age yet. And this may actually help us prevent that by making sure those interventions are in there a little bit earlier. Does that kind of make sense? Okay. Any other questions or comments? All right, thank you. And that is all for education.
Okay, next we're moving on to operations, and that will be facilitated by Rick.
Thank you. We have 4 agenda items under operations. The first one being human resources update. Mike Freeze. Thank you all for attending. Excuse me?
Mine's going to join.
Oh, yeah. And Mai Vang is also going to be, did I say that? All right. Thank you, ma'am.
We have a new clicker, right? It's very exciting. Hey, okay. Does it go backwards too? Okay, perfect. First of all, thank you again for the opportunity to be in front of you this evening. My name is Mike Freeze, Executive Director of Human Resources. I'm pleased to be joined by our Director of Recruitment and Talent Development, Mai Vang. And we're here to provide what is essentially a kind of a progress update on human resources in terms of work we've been doing. Typically, this would be like an annual report. And so we would provide updates based on identified district priorities. And so that's what we'll be doing this evening. And we're happy to answer any questions that you may have. For members of the public that may not be aware, the Human Resources Department itself, we kind of cover 3 basic categories, right? Staffing, compensation and benefits, and employee performance management. So within there, you're going to see all the work done related to recruiting, hiring, a lot of support around the development and retention of staff. Some of that was referenced earlier in our strategic planning conversation. Wages, incentives, insurance, retirement, leaves, leave accruals, leave usage, that's all covered in the comp and benefit side of things. And then of course, supervision, evaluation, and discipline is addressed through employee performance management. So at the beginning of this school year, Superintendent Beyer addressed us at the administrative retreat and helped outline some of the critical priorities for the year. Of course, the referendum was top of mind and that did pass. Other areas included equitable instruction, strategic planning, and intentional community engagement. And so that's what we're going to focus our report on tonight. And again, feel free to let us know if you do have any questions along the way. Equitable instruction, although the Human Resources Department is not directly providing the instruction, we reviewed this very carefully and then made sure that we targeted our efforts to support the aspects that we could best support and help coordinate with other departments and influence. And so equitable instruction, this conversation was about making sure that all of our students had access to rigorous academics that would stretch their intellectual capacities so they can achieve at high levels. Making sure that we address aspects of how we utilize educator effectiveness, which we'll speak about in a few slides, to identify and assess areas for growth, provide professional development and support, ensure that we have strong mentorship opportunities, and our continued efforts to ensure that we have highly effective educators in the schools that need the most support. So I'm going to ask Mai to speak first to how we've done some work this year relative to that first item related to accessing academics.
All right. To support equitable instruction as a priority, we've been collaborating with the teaching and learning and success departments to enhance developing an internal pipeline of future educators and paraprofessionals. We have aligned our dual credit courses with the programming at NWTC and UWGB to ensure that HR, district department staff, school counselors, and teachers understand how each course contributes to college and career readiness. We've also established working relationships with teachers and teachers of educator courses, as well as future educator groups. Some examples are I attended 2 dual credit courses at Preble High School aimed at future educators and got to learn more about the students' future career plans, learn with them during their curriculum that day, and also spoke to them about future educator opportunities within our school district. It was really a great opportunity to encourage them to come back and potentially teach one day. Another example was I observed teachers at Chapel Elementary School alongside West High School students that were a part of Future Educators of America. And that helped me to really gain valuable insights into their program and the activities that they're doing around the school district. We also have outreach efforts with education students from Northern Michigan University and Iola Scandinavia School District to introduce them to our school communities and also discuss future educator opportunities with them. These ongoing efforts reinforce our commitment to cultivating a strong pipeline of future educators through meaningful collaboration and engagement.
The second aspect of this then is ensuring that our staff who are part of the educator effectiveness evaluation process are supported in that. As you may know, the educator effectiveness law affects our site-based administrators, our principals and associate principals, as well as our professional educators. That is mandated by the state. And so annually, the Human Resources Department, in conjunction with others, ensure that everyone is provided the information about how the system functions. So our new hires get taught how the educator effectiveness system works. Our administrators get trained in how to make sure they're following the expectations of the state. One of the things that the HR department has been connected with this year that's a little bit unique is that the Department of Public Instruction announced that they were going to stop being the formal sponsor in contract with the software platform Frontline that we've used for about a dozen years in terms of documenting supervision evaluation. So we've spent the last number of months trying to determine, would we continue with Frontline based on the money that the state will continue to give us, knowing that we've got about a dozen years in the system, understanding other priorities, other things that would impact, you know, if we were going to take a new system on, what would that look like? What's the learning? What's the timeline, et cetera? We've done our due diligence in reviewing the onboarding options that might exist in the Tyler evaluation platform, as well as talking with CISA 7 and meeting with vendors that they're bringing in that other districts are looking at. We've even looked at the Google Forms that the Department of Public Instruction has put together. And while they're very nice forms, in the interest of ensuring security and stability, we're not confident in jumping into something like that. So at this point, we're going to be recommending that we'll stick with the Frontline platform for next year because that'll be the least disruptive approach for our staff and for our supervisors and maintain continuity. And so we'll be navigating that. But that's one of the things that we worked on this year relative to the critical priorities in that regard. We also know that mentorship really supports staff development, onboarding beyond just the new employee orientation, and it supports with kind of a continuity of excellence among the staff. And so you may be familiar with the Educator Mentor Program. You know, we do have a licensed educator in the HR department. Her name is Marie Visti. She helps out not just with licensing pieces, but to a great extent, the comprehensive educator induction program and helping coordinate the mentoring program. But we've also been expanding this year. We make sure that this year, in conjunction with Green Bay Education Association, their president or executive director. Here, what's your role, Brent? President, thank you, sorry. President Brent Bergstrom has worked really hard to help us secure funds that would support the creation of a paraprofessional mentor support program. Amy Fish, who was here earlier, also has helped secure funds so that we have some financial backing to support all new paraprofessionals who were hired this year as part of their onboarding and sustained onboarding have been assigned a mentor, and we've been able to provide monthly, we've kind of mirrored it after the educator one. They've had an opportunity for monthly mentor support and learning, and it's been a great partnership. I know Brian was talking earlier about the importance of partnerships. This has been an example of a great partnership that we've been able to grow. Our administrators who are new to the district have monthly meetings as part of an ongoing mentorship support. David John's school leadership team leads those primarily. And then also a couple months ago, the Board of Education approved an upgraded reclassified central registration position. And Dan Mellenberg, who's been helping doing some analysis of the support program for our office personnel, because we do have, over 100 office personnel in the district, and ensuring that they would have onboarding, training, and support as needed throughout their experience. And so we believe that as an organization, we have embraced the mentorship approach. There's more employee groups to address, but it's something that we're proud to be building off of right now. We also know that there's a lot of headwinds right now in the profession. We've talked about this previously, that the challenges of finding enough certified, qualified educators is one main thing that faces us as a challenge as a state as well as a school district. A couple years ago, I was here and we talked about the 2021 report or 2020 report from the state about the challenges that educator prep programs are facing. Maya's going to talk a little bit about some of the things we're doing to try to address that aspect to ensure that we do have highly effective educators in our system.
All right. As you can see from the slide, we have implemented continuous efforts to ensure highly effective educators in the schools that need the most support as it relates to marketing, recruitment, branding, and promotion. So we continue to optimize our GBAPS career page in partnership with the communications team here, where we recently added a page dedicated to pathways to teaching to help provide resources to aspiring educators on alternative certification pathways. We also serve on the WeCan committee to provide our input on streamlining the system and ensure a user-friendly experience for job seekers as well as our staff. We maintain an active presence on Indeed to reach a broad pool of job applicants, and Handshake has been instrumental in helping us connect with college students as well as college graduates. And then strategic billboard placements have been used to increase brand awareness and highlight critical hiring needs. Additionally, targeted digital ad campaigns are utilized to reach specific audiences and regions. We have strengthened our employer branding by creating a strategic recruiting marketing campaign in partnership with our communications team, where we are actively promoting GBAP's career opportunities as well as staff experiences through LinkedIn and the GBAP's Careers Facebook page, which has actually more than doubled in likes and followers since the beginning of the school year, which is really exciting. Proactive talent sourcing also remains a key component of our recruitment strategy and allows us to identify and engage with potential candidates online, and has also resulted in a handful of hires this school year. So these are two examples of job ads that were created by our communications team. Very, very talented, to attract talent to our district's critical roles, and these have been shared on Facebook and LinkedIn and other job advertisements. This is a flyer of our walk-up hiring event that happened last July, which actually attracted about 100 attendees. And as a result, we hired 9 talented educators and also filled some of our hourly positions, which was really exciting.
We think the key was our superintendent and associate superintendent were standing out on the street, flagging people down, asking if they want to step in. That was a key strategy. We've already signed you up for next summer, by the way. So, that this remains a challenge. Like I said, there are headwinds. We are a large school district relative to our area. We continue to hire approximately 200 to 225 educators each school year. One of the things that we look at is then of the people we are hiring, how do things look in the current job market relative to what it looked like 15, 20, 30 years ago? I've shared this before. One of the things that is kind of the historical profile of an educator hired in our district, historical, typically 20 years ago, they come in, they've got their bachelor's degree, they out of high school, they went to their undergrad and they got their ed prep taken care of. They get certified in a content area and discipline, and then they're licensed in a grade range or developmental level. Increasingly, we're seeing that the educators that we've typically sourced from these universities, and the top universities are the ones that remain very reliable overall for us. We've established and deepened our relationship with the local UW Green Bay. UW Oshkosh just took over as having more folks in our district overall than St. Norbert. That's our recent development. Stevens Point, you can see a lot of the UWs are there. That's historically where we've gotten our educators from. And so we continue to source very, very intentionally with those relationships in those universities. However, oh yes, Brian, I'm sorry.
And I wanted to catch this just a couple slides ago when you were talking about the effectiveness and the hiring in Green Bay and the unique situations that presents. Many years ago, it was told to me that you're hired by the Board of Education and with the impression that you work for the district. And I think we need to continue to stress that you're not hired by a building, you're hired by the district, and continue to utilize that to retain our employees that we have now, but also to recruit. So if you're hired and assigned to one building, the opportunities that we have within this district, being such a large district, gives our employees that opportunity to grow, but we need to also continue to recognize that resource or that ability for our employees to transfer within the district. And I think that's a huge selling point for our district. If you've taught third grade and you're in a building and you're a good third grade teacher and there's another spot that'll keep you in our district, we've got to make sure we're utilizing that. So I think it's a strength of our district compared to a lot of the other ones in the area and makes it an attractive part for us. So I hope we continue to recognize that.
Yes, thank you. In fact, this next month, both Maya and I will be heading over to UW Oshkosh for their spring, their mock interviews and their professional development that they hold for their students. And then it's the Eastern Wisconsin recruitment fair that is hosted for the eastern half. We'll go to the western one as well. And we absolutely emphasize that, wherever you start, you can grow and learn and you can find the right place in your career because of the size that we offer and the variety. We have some greatly updated schools at a glance brochures that Lori Blakeslee's team has developed and updated. It allows us to show people, and they're great because they got the logos and the names and they talk, and you get to show people right there, like, we're not making this up. We've got all these opportunities. So absolutely, I appreciate you mentioning that. We are mindful and aware, however, that our newer educators, most of them start with a bachelor's degree. However, there are some positions that you can start with an associate's degree and relevant career experience. Some of our new hires have fully completed their educator preparation program. In some cases, or often, it's as a career changer. Many are working then as an educator while still enrolled full-time. Sorry, not full-time. Well, still enrolled in a path to licensure, and some still have stipulations about having to pass certain standardized tests to remove those stipulations. And so to give you an idea of what that looks like from a support standpoint, we've got approximately 191 of our current educators that have a license with stipulations that they're having to work on additional things to eventually become fully provisionally licensed. And so it requires a lot of support and understanding and empathy for the fact that they've got a full-time job and they're still fully committed to securing those things. And so that is a big aspect that impacts the work that our staff do right now.
Okay, does anyone have any questions? Mr. Lee?
Mike, did I hear you right? We hire between 200 and 225 new teachers every year?
Yes.
And just, I'm just looking at the number, but we still have a deficiency in teachers, right? I'm just curious. Now, I spoke to some teachers and they're not from our district. And they have this experience where there's difficulties to get into a district if you are not a preferred educator or you weren't from a particular area. We probably don't have anything like that here in Green Bay, right?
I'm not sure I fully understand what that question means. I'm sorry. Could you repeat that?
What, I mean, I'm just trying to say that while we try to fill these teachers' deficiencies, we have no prejudice. We go for the best, highly qualified individual, right?
100%. Yes, sir.
And then that leads me to my last question is, I'm curious to hear your how is our retention program here in the district? Because I mean, if I run a company and I hire 200, 225 every year and I have to maintain that seems to me like there's inefficiency there. What is our retention program that can hopefully, when we hire these people, that they'll stay with us at least 3 to 5 years or 7 years?
Yes, it's a very good point. I'd refer back to when we talked earlier with our Thriving Workforce Domain Team, some of the things that we're going to be focusing on through that plan to more intentionally target retention and development, number one. We do tend to have about 40 to 45 or 50 retirees, but that doesn't account for the other, what would be 150, right? Where did folks go? Did their family relocate? Did they leave the profession for some other reason? Did they promote up into a different role? Are they now serving as an administrator? Getting more understanding of why did some folks choose to exit the profession is a big part of what we need to understand so that we can develop specific strategies so that this is a place that people will continue to want to stay and work at.
So those information are through the obtained through like exit interviews and okay. All right, thank you.
Yes, we do have a slide a little bit later on that shows a little bit about that, but talk a little bit about that too. So yes.
James?
Thanks, Mike. Just recently, it was well advertised that we had a cohort exit a program at UWGB that has represented, internally hired individuals that went through a program and became licensed educators, right? What's the feasibility? And I understand that was a granted program, but the feasibility and investigation of making more systemic an approach like that where we're able to identify individuals, especially in areas of multilingual educators that we know we have a lot of native reserve here that could fill those positions. Have we laid out what it takes to make a program like that more systemic and whether it be outreach to foundation or not to understand what that looks like?
It's in development. We've explored what is possible, what is known, what is unknown. And so we've got all the conversations have started in different ways. And it really becomes okay, how do we then pull it all together and say, this is the strand we're going to go with? So we've had conversations with external partners. We've got contacts in the realtor side of things. We've got going with funding sources to try to figure out there may not be a single route. One of the biggest challenges that we currently face is for a current employee who has their associates or bachelors, how do we support them in getting their teaching credentials while they're still working for us full time? That's one of the biggest challenges because do you pay them full time, but they only work part time and they get release time? But then what do you do for so we're trying to puzzle through some of that. That's part of some of the big challenges that we face right now. We believe we have willing ed prep partners who will be flexible with us, whether it's UW Green Bay or St. Norbert or CISA in our local region, right? But it's a matter of locking down the funding stream and then confirming how would that work for a current employee versus somebody that's not a current employee. So that's the challenge right now.
Go ahead, Mike, work through your slides.
wearing out the battery on the clicker here. Sorry, everybody. I should have put in the animation. I did want to mention that, you know, even though working on a project like the Tyler Enterprise HR and finance system is not a direct equitable instruction thing, it speaks to some of the things that some of the board trustees talked about earlier about reducing inefficiencies, improving accuracy, helping create systems that free up the HR team, the payroll, the finance team to provide support to schools when they have questions. Ku talked about like good customer service. All those sorts of things are better done when everything's running efficiently and effectively. I wanted to just share an update, just to sneak this one in here a little bit. This is tomorrow morning's agenda or tomorrow afternoon's agenda for our core team on the Tyler project, just showing you where we are in terms of preparation for the project, right? There's like 6 phases to this project, and you know, the system is being built. It's up in terms of the initiate and plan, assess and define are basically done. They're finalizing all the aspects of the program. They're about 70%, over 2/3 of the way done in preparing it. They're working with our team members every single day. And then we'll know we're there when we get into that final testing and tease out all the final bugs. And that'll be happening over these next 2 months prior to, I think, what we're going to call a bit of a soft rollout during open enrollment is where our first time we're going to really utilize it prior to July 1 being kind of go live for most of the parts of it. So. Another critical priority area we already addressed earlier tonight, so I won't. I just want to mention that the HR workforce domain reflected in the strategic planning piece. And then the kind of wanted to wrap up tonight. Maya, if you could talk a little bit about some of the work that you and the team have been doing with regards to intentional community engagement.
Yes, the HR team has worked really hard to build a year-round approach to community engagement on the job recruitment front. We've been establishing some connections within the school district by participating in the Student Achievement Summit, which has been a lot of fun, where we are connecting directly with our students to build meaningful relationships and also plant the seed that working in education is both rewarding and very impactful. I'm also a member of the Green Bay Chamber's Talent Task Force and Green Bay SHRM, so I get to strategize, partner, collaborate, and learn with industry leaders on different talent trends. Like Mike mentioned, we have established partnerships with UWGB, NWTC, St. Norbert, we've gone to Madison, spoken to Milwaukee, to name a few, to really expand our recruitment efforts for educators. We also represent GBAPS as speakers at various events. I will be participating in a chamber panel in a few weeks. And we also, like Mike mentioned, participate in mock interviews and breakout sessions for program students who are in education.
We believe that intentional engagement, Ingrid made mention of this earlier. Brian was also talking about the importance of connecting with our staff to provide platforms for folks to provide their input and their ideas. So we just listed some of the ways in which our staff are engaging and we engage with them, just some of the examples. One of the big ones this year was we made a shift over the summer as part of a cost saving move. We went away from paying an external entity dollars to run the exit surveys. And instead we've morphed them over and we're running them internally. And so we continue to receive our exit survey data and people are provided an opportunity for exit interviews if they wish. I think that was discussed earlier. And so I think one of the things that's nice as far as our most recent data is our staff who have retired or resigned, you know, by and large are definitely recommending that we are an employer that they would like to recommend for us to work with. And you'll also notice that one of the main areas where we continue to have staff resign or retire is in special education. It remains a hard to fill area, very important area. And so that remains a focus for us, okay? And then finally, to show full alignment, I'd like Maya to kind of clarify how we've tried to engage our initial educators to understand their perspective as it pertains to these critical priorities. Maya?
Yeah, so last fall, members of the cabinet and I conducted onboarding input sessions with new educators in our district to gather insights on how we can continue to equip them with the tools and resources that they need to really establish a strong foundation long-term within our district and also to ensure their sense of belonging. As you can see, we had about 107 responses out of 161 at the time, which is a 66% completion rate. As the pie chart shows, 86.9% of our new educators have a clear understanding of how their roles contribute to our school district's critical priorities. This level of understanding promotes a sense of ownership and commitment, ultimately benefiting student outcomes and fostering collaboration throughout the district. In this one, 87.8% of our new educators would recommend GBAPS as a great place to work, which is an amazing percentage. This high level of endorsement highlights the positive and supportive work environment that we strive to create for a thriving workforce.
And that's what we have to offer tonight in terms of an overall summary. We appreciate your time and attention. We know it's a long evening. If you have any other questions, we're happy to answer.
Any questions? Okay. Mai and Mike, thank you. Okay, next agenda item is purchase of student Chromebooks. We'll be joined at the table by Amy Jekyll, the Executive Director of Technology and Information.
Mr. President.
Excuse me?
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. We heard from the vendors today with concern about the tariffs impacting the price of the laptops that you're about to hear about. So with that, following the presentation and discussion, I would like the board to entertain the possibility of a quick special board meeting later this week in order to vote on this item.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, everybody. So it is that time of year where we discuss our yearly refresh for student Chromebooks. So the proposal is to purchase devices for our first, sixth, and ninth graders. So the total number of devices needed is 4,575 devices. These are the exact same devices that we purchased last year. So in the memo to the board, you will see that we got 10 qualifying bids. The three lowest priced bids are what you see. The first is for the cost of the Chromebook. And then the second table is for the cost of the license that we need to manage that device.
Ryan?
When we're looking at these, I'm recognizing some of these companies from previous purchases on these, and I'm seeing the technology support with them as well. Having that information updated as far as the cost, is that our previous track record working with companies, is that taken in consideration as far as, because I could see that being a significant cost on here, that if we've had companies that we've worked with, well, they're going to give us that heads up on there. So is that taken into consideration as well on this?
Yes. Yes. One more time. Yes, that is taken into consideration.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you. Oh, I'm sorry.
May we move forward then, looking for a date? Okay, thank you.
Okay. Next agenda item is school security drill review. This is a confidential review, obviously not discussed in the in an open forum, but if anyone has any questions or needs more information, Chris Collar is our point of contact for questions. He is the coordinator for safety and security. Okay. And then the last agenda item for operations is other post-employment benefits, OPEB report.
Good evening, everybody.
As an intro, if you recall, a couple of years ago, the district and the board approved opening of the Fund 73 or the OPEB trust. So basically what this is in a nutshell is we are setting aside funds for our liability for our post-employment pension or our stipend, supplemental pension, emeritus. So we have set aside, we have transferred into that account for the last couple of years, but basically annually we have to bring, or I have to bring to the board just an overview of what the plan has done. And then essentially what the board will be voting on is to, per my recommendation, to keep CISA 6 as where our investments are, and then also to keep the moderate growth investment strategy. So annually we have, there are several, over 100, I think it's 120 districts that are in the CISA 6 OPEB. So we meet annually, we go over a lot of things that are way above for investment strategies and things like that. But I trust, this is a program that has been running for several years. They have to follow a lot of guidelines, to make sure that our investments are safe and that they're doing what we want them to do. So if you pull up the annual report or the annual review report, so basically what that's showing on the first page is what we have as of 6/30/24 in the trust, which is about 8.6 million. And then it shows in number 2, the net position from one year to the next. If you recall, in that year, we did transfer about $5 million into that trust. So the change in fiduciary net position was that 5.6 million. So we were at 8.6 million, and then it shows the interest and earnings on that first page. So if you scroll to the second page, what that shows you is the total disbursements from the trust. So basically what we're doing now currently is we are paying for that emeritus benefit out of our operations funds. So out of Fund 10, Fund 27, and that equates to about $3 million a year. So what this does is we are essentially saving or putting a savings account, right? And we are building up this trust. So eventually we will no longer have to take those funds out of our operations funds. This Fund 73 will just pay that benefit until it sunsets. So if you recall, the emeritus benefit has and is sunsetting, but it will be a while until we see anybody getting paid that benefit, like out to 2050. If everybody remains active, and goes through the school district until they retire. So that's why, like in that 3A, the $2.9 million is what we have actually contributed towards the emeritus benefit. And then it was 2.9 or 2,904,000 the year before. So my recommendation, like I said before, and what the board will be approving and voting on at the next meeting, is to remain with our moderate growth, investment policy that we had approved when we first opened up the trust, and that we don't change our investment manager. We remain in the CISA 6 OPEB. So those are the 2 recommendations that the board will be voting on next board meeting. Any questions?
Okay, no questions. Thank you. And that concludes the operations segment. I yield the floor.
All right. Going to have policy and governance, and I believe that's Andrew.
Thank you. We will start with some more revisions to policy 383.2 for curricular dogs in the school setting.
Good evening. We are bringing back the curricular dog policy to the board to ask that the language regarding the insurance requirements be modified in order to facilitate more ability of our staff to be able to bring their curricular dogs to school. Due to needing to have the insurance as an individual, the current limits are a little bit cost prohibitive for our staff. We worked with our insurance carrier, our liability provider, to determine what would be an acceptable modification to those limits. And we are going to move, with your approval, from a 1 million, 3 million, meaning 1 million per incident, 3 million aggregate, to a 1 million per incident, 2 million aggregate. And we're asking that the language be written a little bit more broadly so that as issues like this come up with insurance requirements, we can work with that liability carrier to do discussions with them in determining whether we can modify those requirements.
All right, thank you. Any questions from the board? Okay, I'll go forward next week for a vote. Then we have revisions to policy 446, student searches.
And if possible, Andrew, can we take policy 446 and 446.1 together?
Sure.
Tonight, we're bringing forward modifications to these two policies to require that parents be notified when a student is searched or when their belongings are searched. And so in policy 446, this language would apply to whatever is searched of the student, and similarly of their belongings in 446.1 as well. And so the search would happen and then notification would happen to the parents or guardians.
All right, any questions on that?
Yes, I'm sorry. I do. In section where it says specific searches in D1B, the wording has me, I was looking at it in the way that, the way it currently reads in a situation in which a search or of a student's person, the school administration, and you put a new word in there, may attempt to contact a school resource officer to conduct the search, which that part reads fine, but then the rest of the sentencing it relates back to the old way that it was intended, that was struck, like the word should first, because it says if the officer is not available, the administrator may proceed with the search unless the information justifying the search suggests that the student is in possession of dangerous materials. So the implication is still with the wording that says, yeah, you may, but you probably should. That's how somebody could misinterpret that. So a suggested rewrite of that part of it would say searches, and I also thought, where does it talk about authorized and trained people doing the searches? I don't know where that was mentioned or if that was mentioned. I didn't necessarily see it. But then I would say the school administrator may proceed with the search unless the information justifying the search suggests dangerous materials. That would then it would make it more, it would meet with the intent to say the administrator should do the search unless there's high chance of there being some dangerous material there. Then I think it would meet with the intent. Searches only authorized and trained school administrators may proceed with the search unless the information justifying the search suggests that the student is in possession of dangerous materials whereby the expertise of law enforcement is necessary.
So you're just crossing off if the officer is not available, the administrator may proceed. Okay. So then to your question on the authorized and trained, that's in the definitions of school official. So only school officials may conduct searches, which designates who those individuals are in that definition. Yes, so it is the superintendent, district office administrators, school administrators, and then school employees designated by the superintendent or school administrator, the school resource officer, and law enforcement officer. So as part of the law with respect to searches, it must be a school administrator. or someone who's designated by a school administrator. And then part of an administrator's formal training includes student searches. And if it's not a school administrator, then we do routine training with individuals with respect to searches.
Okay, thank you. And that kind of rolls into, well, you haven't gone into it yet, but the next one, the next document does the same thing for locker searches. The rewriting of it should reflect that as well, to keep it consistent with what you're saying here.
So any other changes with 446? Do you want to go to?
Have one, so we are we're backing down a little bit from the requirement of really try to have a school resource officer to maybe we don't need to have a school resource officer unless there's dangerous materials.
So the language said it should first attempt to contact a school resource officer to conduct the search. Some of our administrators were reading that as they were not allowed to conduct the search, that a school resource officer needed to conduct the search. That was not the intent of the language. So the switch to may is to clarify that you are permitted to proceed with the search in the absence of a school resource officer. It does not need to be a school resource officer conducting the search.
Yeah, should first means I shouldn't unless I tried to find a SRO, but then one wasn't available, so I continued. That's what it said. Although what people did was I can't search until, okay. I guess I prefer anything that when there's not the suspicion of dangerous materials. I mean, in my individual opinion, as a independent elected official, I'm concerned about over policing, right? I'm concerned about a situation getting over policed when a search for I don't know, an exam cheat sheet is conducted by law enforcement, and then there's something that is law enforcement's involved in. When the administrator, and they might be obligated to, and again, I'm not talking about something, dangerous. Whenever we say anything dangerous, that's a different level anyways, but I prefer things that don't over criminalize. So I like the may instead of should first, right?
And Andrew, I'm on the same page. I'm going to take a different approach to it. I think, we've had conversations between police officers and school resource officers, being the discussion with them both being sworn officers of the police department. I think the role of a school resource officer there is as a preventative measure. So I agree with what you're saying on that, taking the other approach that having that school resource officer there allows that connection to still be present and not necessarily having them doing searches unless it's something life threatening. So I think we're on the same page. I'm taking just another approach at the importance of that on there. So thank you, Andrew.
All right, anything else on this, and including then, including 446.1 then, the student searches, and then also going into the next one, which is the locker searches?
Rick, did you have a change to 446.1?
Yes, hold on, pull it up.
I'm going to think it's section 3B.
Yes, with the same intent that if we rewrote it to say that they may proceed with the search unless the information suggests dangerous material, then I think it would align with your intent and with the other policy.
So are you looking at B, the language of B2?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
All right, anything else on 446 or 446.1? Okay, we'll move that forward, and then 522.4, conflict of interest.
Thank you. over the course of the last few years, we've had situations where students who require a one-to-one assistant, whether it be a monitor, a para, some sort of supervision along those lines, have needed that. And we have very willing and qualified parents who have offered their assistance in serving in that role. That presents a conflict for that one-to-one individual who's supervising, working directly with the student, implementing IEPs and applying school discipline. That creates a little bit of a conflict, and it's not specifically spelled out in the conflict of interest policy. So we're just bringing this forward to specifically spell out that in those very specific situations, a parent or a guardian would not be able to serve as the child's one-to-one person providing that assistance.
Okay, questions? Okay, I have it. So there is more in here than just parent, right, being their own students one-on-one. What are the rules about a student being in the class where are they only if it's their parent is the only teacher of that grade or level, otherwise they must be with one of the other ones, or is it not necessarily that strict, or was it not, but now it will be?
The language was revised that indicates that we're not prohibiting a student from being assigned to a classroom when the parent is a teacher of a class or grade, or that class or grade is the only class or grade in the school. So AP Physics, one teacher teaches AP Physics, student is enrolled, the student would be able to take that class.
What is the rule before this passes? The student couldn't take it, or is it just unspecified?
It was just not specified. We wanted to make sure that this language was not being applied to prohibit that, since we're now having specific language in this policy.
Okay, what was I guess there probably wasn't a policy. What was the practice of a parent teaches third grade at a school where there's two of each grade? Their kid would not be in their own classroom probably, or never, or are there so few? Am I overestimating the number of cases, and there might be close to zero actual cases of this?
I think we have to get back to you on that because it's all anecdotal at this point. So we would have to ask our school leadership directors if and what is communicated to principals around that to understand current practice and historical practice.
I'm not, for my sake, I'm not asking for any meaningful amount of, as I'm rethinking this, we're big, but we're not that big, and many of our school, I would assume common sense would suggest that if you teach third grade, there's probably more than one third grade. Your kid is probably in the other one, but maybe there's something weird and you don't. So that's good that that's not, I just want to make sure that we aren't accidentally over restricting, right? To say that, okay, well, there never was a rule before, so now the closest thing to a rule says, well, you can only ever be it if there's only one. Okay. And is this, I guess, the other thing I'll throw out there is board policy is pretty absolute. Is there truly, I mean, I can't think off the top of my head of any situation where having the parent be the one-on-one para sounds like probably usually not a good idea, but I mean, we are saying it, passing this policy, we are taking the stand that it never is okay. Never is a big word, so I just wanted to.
That was what was requested from the special education department.
I guess I still though am wondering, I mean, in the selection process, certainly, I mean, I get it. If you have a policy, it's easier to say, no, we can't than no, we won't. But I hope it's not that hard to say, no, we won't when it's something that is probably, I'm gonna say, almost always a bad idea. I'm just thinking of a situation, the rare situation where maybe that would be the only thing that makes a situation work without someone having to leave the district. So, okay. All right, anything else on this? Okay, we will move that forward, and then for 11.11, sexual harassment and sexual violence.
We are bringing forward the policy and rule for 11.11 to reactivate the 2020 policy and rule and put dormant the 2024 policy and rule. Based on the Kentucky decision and based on the recent guidance that was put out by the Department of Education clarifying that effective immediately that the 2020 Title IX rules are in effect.
So this one doesn't have a red line. Are we just replacing the old with the replacing in full?
That's correct.
And does this make do the 2020 rules make the position of the offender or alleged offender relatively stronger or relatively weaker?
The 2024 regs really didn't change a school district's ability to discipline prior to the disposition of the Title IX complaint or move the offender prior to the disposition of the Title IX complaint. The rules allowed us to shorten our the 2024 rules allowed us to shorten our procedure and just made clear that Title IX applied to gender nonconforming and transgender students. Our district policy, our non-discrimination policy already identifies that protection as well as a Seventh Circuit case and that it covers Wisconsin has already provided those protections. So with the change from 2024 to 2020, those protections are not going away. What is unfortunate is that our timeline is back to about 2 to 3 months for a Title IX situation to resolve itself, when we were able to shorten that and get finality for our students much quicker than that.
Okay, anyone else before I have a couple more? Okay, so it's not better for the party that has been harmed. It may not be much worse because there's this other I say patchwork, but it's an important patchwork of other policies we've done to protect vulnerable groups and so forth. But I mean, you don't have a lawsuit and a whole chunk of federal regulations thrown out because of a honest difference of opinion between some people about whether the timeline is really right or not. There's always more to it, and you're either probably enhancing some protections or you're probably weakening some, and it sounds like we're probably weakening some but have other ways to protect the people involved.
In the Green Bay Area Public School District, we are not weakening protections for students in the classifications that I identified. The changes again are largely procedural with how long it will take to bring a complaint to a resolution.
Okay, so if that's the case, what's said like that, it doesn't sound so bad other than, but I think it's probably still pretty bad. I mean, it's not, yeah.
I'm just gonna reiterate, in the Green Bay Area Public School District, we are not taking the extreme approach that has been taken by the change in the regs.
So we still, you feel that you have to recommend this because we're kind of being forced to do it, the ruling is binding on Wisconsin? Or so overwhelmingly likely to be that we should just get it over with?
We are required to go back to the 2020 regs. We can always provide greater protection than what the regs provide, and we did that starting in 2017 before the 2024 regs ever came into existence. So since 2017, this district has provided protections for a multitude of students who were not protected under federal law.
And so when, if you have someone who is using if you have an offender who is using the 2020 regs to intentionally drag out the process, they're only dragging out the process and there's not gonna be harm to the offended.
I don't know how to answer that. Yeah, I don't know how to answer that.
It maybe wasn't very, I'll take it offline. Okay, all right. Anything else? Okay, that'll be moved forward, and then we also have at the same time we have the rule with that, and that.
Yep, that's just a swap.
Questions on that? Okay. And then finally, we have a handful of 300 and 400 series policies. We have independent study assessment program and assessment program guidelines.
Thank you. So with respect to 343.3 independent study, Eric Kahn worked to revise the existing policy to reflect the district's current practices with respect to student selection of independent study for course credits.
Questions on that? Okay. Sounds good. And then so no questions on any of the teaching and learning 300s?
Any questions on the assessment program 346 policy and rule?
I'm just curious on the reasoning with the independent study part, I'm sorry. And if someone wants to share this with me after as to why we limit summer school options to 1 credit, but that's a policy change, not necessarily your wheelhouse here, Melissa, but opportunities on that. So I don't know who would, but.
I will ask Dr. Khan to get in touch with you. Oh, you can? Okay.
Our summer school program is built around a reimbursable model for the teacher of record for the program. And in order to qualify for that type of arrangement, there actually is a seat time requirement that has to match the window of time that summer school runs. And so that seat time requirement makes it possible for students to earn either 2 half credits in 2 different courses or a single full credit like is outlined here. That would be true of virtual learning courses offered in our summer school program as well.
Okay. So assessment, independent study, anything on assessment program? Um, Policy or rule? Okay. Then we'll move ahead to alternative 342.6 ed pathways and curriculum modifications.
Thank you. Katie Selzer worked to revise this policy and rule to reflect our programs. It was a little bit outdated in the programs that were identified in the policy, as well as to revise the process for a student to request that alternative pathway.
Questions? So the red line here is almost all, just a lot of addition that probably largely states a lot of good things we already had available that just weren't listed. So before, was it just the board recognizes that, yep, we should have alternative programs or curriculum modifications and didn't call it pathways, and yep, we support it and go for it? And so now we have details, okay. All right. And then attached to that or along with that is the 342.6 rule, district alternative pathways to graduation.
And that's where a majority of the changes were made with respect to the programs that are offered here in the district.
So did we just cross out things that no longer, like all those things are crossed out, we don't have them?
That's correct. It's about a 7-year, 8-year-old dated enumeration of the programs we had at the time. And so this is our opportunity to get those current.
For example, Chance for Change, Curry Lane, those were all discontinued when we opened Minoka.
So what if a student's incarcerated? We crossed all those off, or they just, is that also under the Minoka Hill umbrella then, or? Okay. Cause if you just read this and you look at the red line, you look at maybe, oh my God, here's a whole bunch of vulnerable populations we've just crossed out, which would be horrible. But most of these exist under the umbrella of Minoka Hill then. Well,
They weren't pathways to graduation. So Minoka, the policy just reflected alternative programs, not alternative pathways to graduation. So Dr. Rose Minoka Hill is still an alternative school, but it's for many reasons and many different programs, not all aligned. Of course, kids are progressing to graduate, but they're not different pathways for graduation that are now in this school.
My understanding was always Minoka Hill was meant to be a temporary spot, so we get them in the least restrictive environment, get them back into their traditional high school. That's your path to graduation. So we're providing those services at that opportunity to get them back into some setting that would be a composite high school or wherever we can. So that's kind of where this has been narrowed down. Okay.
Okay, we'll go ahead forward to 443 student conduct.
I'm going to turn that over to David.
So this proposal is coming back to you after being tabled about a month ago, where we spent a little more time with the staff exploring that distinction between the word discipline and consequence. And so primarily what you see redlined change throughout here is moving that word out, the word discipline out, and holding that word consequence to mean what prior versions of this we had used discipline to mean.
Board questions?
Next then would be, oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, so are the definitions of defiant and insubordination that are added, are those because of the rules to follow?
Yeah, there's a repeal that is on for your discussion as well, that this now actually absorbs other policies that really stood just to define different components of behavior. And that's the repeal of 443.9.
All right, if there's no questions on 443 policy, anything on 443 rules, student conduct policy? Okay, I do like the removal of disrespectful, not that disrespect is good, but it's very subjective and is certainly covered by dangerous, disruptive, interfere with the ability to teach, I think. Okay, anything else on 443 rule? Okay, 447.3, student detention and suspensions.
The language of 447.3 policy and rule were updated to reflect our current practice and then to incorporate the language of 447.2 detentions, the policy and the rule into that policy to make it student suspensions, detentions and suspensions. So that the detention stand alone, the process is similar, due process is applied whether it's a detention or a suspension. So ensuring a similar process.
Questions on this? All right. And then 447.3 rules, student detention and suspension procedures, rule 447.3.
Yep, that's the same as the policy, just updated to reflect the practice. And then include the language of 447.2 rule on detentions.
Anything else? Questions? Okay, and then we'll move ahead to the repeals then of 443.9. And so I guess
Oh, go ahead.
the certain things like insubordination and defiant got named in in a different policy that we're keeping, but what is the net effect of repealing this? Like what's gone by repealing this?
So this would be an example of a policy that was pretty narrowly defined or narrowly existed to define 2 acts of student conduct, which are now folded into a more comprehensive policy that outlines multiple acts of student conduct and the expectations around those. With, as you noted earlier, defiant behavior being clearly defined in a more explicit way than what you had noticed in the other policy.
Okay, I get it. Questions? 447.2 detention policy, that's repealed and goes into detention and suspensions. Okay. And then that's and the associated rule. Okay. If there's nothing further, then that concludes policy and governance.
Okay. That concludes our agenda for tonight. But we are going into closed session. Thank you, guys. Lynn Gerlach. Thank you.
I move that the board adjourn into closed session pursuant to Wisconsin statute 19.85, section 1C, considering employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility, to its superintendent's performance evaluation.
Second.
Kinsey.
Becker,
Aye.
McCoy,
Aye.
Lyerly,
Aye.
Mills,
Aye.
Gerlach. Aye. Crossan,
Aye.
Lee.
Aye.
Okay. We are adjourned into closed session. Thanks, everybody.
You have been watching the Green Bay Area Public School District's Board of Education meeting. Please visit the school district's website, www.gbaps.org, for more information on the district and future meeting dates. If you cannot fully access the information on this video, please let us know the accessibility issue you are having by calling 920-448-2025 or by email at communications@gbaps.org. We will try to provide the information to you in an alternative format and/or make the necessary improvements to make the information accessible.